Chapter 1526–1550 Supremacy Games 1526 I am back. If it were before, Felix wouldn't have minded being the Grand Supreme Leader since it meant more control for his race and possessing the highest authority level in the alliance. But now? The responsibilities of the post weren't a good trade-off when considering his urgent need to get stronger and enter the Eternal Kingdom. So, Noah indeed did him a massive favor, and all of his help to push his potential hadn't gone in vain. They even helped the human race become a member of the 10 rulers, however, it came at the expense of the Void Nation getting kicked out. Felix reacted after hearing about the rest of the news. When he checked how they pulled it off, he was pleasantly surprised to see that Noah and Olivia had led the team to the top of the ladder in the racial games platform. This wasn't all. With their overwhelming strength and authority, they had united the entire Milky Way galaxy under the Mariana Federation and even altered its name to the Galactical Maxwell Federation. Haha, my cute cousins are really popping off. The more Felix read, the more gleeful he got. All the investments he had put in them were paid off in the best possible manner. Felix always helped them simply because they were the closest family he had after his grandfather and would have done it without expecting any returns. But, those two hadn't disappointed him and made him comprehend that he was no longer the sole person responsible for the rise and fall of the human race. They showed him that even if he was gone for decades or centuries, the human race would continue thriving under their leadership. This was everything Felix wanted, someone to take the load off his back while he focused on much bigger matters. After a couple more minutes of being updated, Felix finally closed the holograms and revamped his entire private room for training. The rest of the news wasn't that important since the SG Alliance returned to its serene state after the demon race was conquered and the other side got integrated into their forces. Besides a few demons popping here and there, and some changes to the game platforms, nothing much of importance occurred. I wonder how they will react after they receive this. Felix chuckled after sending an email and invitation link to his friends and subordinates. Then, he started some easy training, wanting to get used to his body again. Inside the Wormhole Express Company's headquarters, Alhadi was seen staring at an email notification on his holographic display, his heart pounding with a mix of disbelief and shock. He quickly tapped the message and read it over and over, his antennas leaning close to the hologram as he tried to comprehend the words. "He's back," he muttered to himself. If it wasn't for the invitation link in front of him with Felix's unique ID imprinted on it, he would have thought someone was playing a nasty prank on him. If there is one person I am certain can cheat death, it has to be him. Haha. Soon, Alhadi burst into excited laughter and pressed on the invitation link immediately. At the same time, in the Great Maxwell Federation's council, Noah was seen sitting on the tallest chair with many holograms in front of him, showcasing hundreds of data related to mysterious lost civilizations, unique extinct natural treasures, and more. He worked his ass off to reach the peak of the Alliance for the sake of being the first to obtain any piece of information about new findings related to civilizations, treasures, pocket dimensions, and such. Obviously, he was looking into them for the sake of finding new ways to increase his strength and push through the last 100,000 BF. Unfortunately, nothing much was found of value, and even if new peculiar treasures were found and he obtained them, his strength remained stagnated. Nothing, sigh, is it really over for me? Noah rubbed his tiresome eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, a picture of his little sister came before him, forcing him to get rid of those thoughts instantly. I can't stop, I won't stop. Noah's visage turned cold and expressionless again, continuing his research. VRR. Suddenly, his AP bracelet vibrated, catching him off guard as he had put it on silence mode, making it impossible for anyone besides the 9 rulers to reach out to him. When he glanced at the screen and saw an email sent by Felix, his expression, usually so composed, broke into a rare shock. It can't be. He muttered as rapidly pressed on the email and read its details, leaving him with various thoughts roaming in his mind. But as the Grand Supreme Leader, he swiftly took control of his raging emotions and accepted the invitation link, wanting to check with his own eyes the validity of the news. It was clear that Fenrir hadn't told him anything about Felix's adventure in the spirit realm. Meanwhile, Olivia's heart skipped a beat when she saw Felix's email in her inbox. Her emerald eyes welled up with tears as she read the words, her emotions a whirlwind of joy and disbelief. "Felix, have you really come back?" She hugged her holographic display to her chest, remembering their childhood escapades together. Without an ounce of hesitation, she clicked on the invitation link and got teleported. While everyone's reaction was leveled, Selfie almost suffered from a heart attack, her fingertips trembling on her holographic keyboard. She couldn't believe her eyes, thinking that she had started to hallucinate at last. When she recalled the cosmic thunderclap and her soul's tingling in familiarity after hearing it, her heartbeats started accelerating rapidly. "Interesting, the kid has been revived," Lady Yggdrasil remarked with an intrigued tone as she watched the situation from Selfie's mind. However, when she saw her daughter's reaction, she started to feel that Felix's return might not be the best thing in the world. "Sigh, here we go again." Lady Yggdrasil smiled wryly at the sight of her daughter swiftly accepting the invitation link without uttering a single word. Whoosh! 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 Noah, Olivia, Bodadi, Selfie, Elder Cyclope, Malak, Queen Allura, and many of Felix's trusted people showed up simultaneously in his private room. However, Candace and all of the Void Nation's upper echelons were missing. "Felix! Boss! It's really him! Master! Ho ho, have you actually returned from the clutches of death? I was worried for a second that my great masterpiece would not have a master." When Felix heard their familiar voices, he smiled and halted his training. He turned to face them and uttered with a playful tone, "Did you miss me?" "I." Before he could the rest of his sentence, he found himself jumped at by both Olivia and Selfie, embracing him as tightly as their arms could hold him while sobbing out loud. There, I am here now, everything will be okay." Felix softened his tone as he caressed their heads, feeling the pain behind their wails. His voice seemed to make things even worse as their cries only got louder. Felix raised his hands in defeat as he looked at the others, only to find out Queen Allura, Malak, and even Bodadi had teary eyes. This made Felix feel appreciative and delighted, as nothing beats knowing that there were many people who cherished you with all of their hearts. "I am back," Felix uttered, his voice as serene as the breeze blowing behind his back. 1527 Too much love to handle. After a couple of minutes, Felix was finally released from Selfie and Olivia's embrace, letting them get out everything in their chest. Even though they stopped embracing him, they didn't leave his side at all. Felix wasn't too bothered by it, understanding that anyone would have reacted the same if their loved one came back from the afterlife after an entire century. It was a dream come true for many and none of them expected it to happen. After everyone sat down, Elder Cyclope was the first to ask what was in everyone's minds. "Boy, did you really die and visit the spirit realm?" While everyone was pretty certain about it, they were still incapable of understanding how it was even possible to go there and return, especially not after an entire century. "Yes, and it was quite the experience, to be honest." Felix chuckled. "Whoa ah!" Bodadi exclaimed in wonder, "Can we know how it went?" "To be honest, I can't share with you much of the details." Felix shook his head. While Lord Hades didn't tell him to keep his mouth shut about matters related to the spirit realm and heavenly plane, Felix understood he shouldn't do it, especially when he told him that he would be watching over him. "I expected as much." Elder Cyclope nodded. "You really can't tell us anything?" Olivia asked, her eyes still puffy and red. "All I can tell you is that your loved ones aren't suffering in the slightest," Felix said as he eyed Noah, knowing that he must be burning to ask him about his sister. Noah felt a bit of relief at the sound of that. His sister's fate had always been torturing him as he had no clue what was happening to her there. "My apologies, Noah, but it wasn't possible to have your sister revived with me." Felix said telepathically. You have nothing to be sorry about. Your return is already a blessing. Noah shook his head, not accepting his apology, plus, if there is someone going to revive her, it will be me. That's the spirit. Felix smiled, realizing that Noah had grown a lot in his absence. Can we know at least how did you come back? Queen Allura raised an eyebrow. I can't think of it being easy, otherwise, everyone will be doing it. Well, returning isn't the hardest part. Felix smiled wryly, it's doing it while still maintaining your memories. Felix went on and explained to them that spirits lose their memories the moment they die, leaving them akin to mindless ghosts. While this raised plenty of questions in their heads, like how Felix was able to revive when this happened to him, Felix kept his mouth shut throughout the entire conversation. In the end, everyone dropped the matter against their burning curiosity and Felix changed the subject to the alliance, showing his appreciation to Noah and Olivia. You guys have really made me proud, Felix said as he patted Olivia and eyed Noah. Hee, of course, we would have never allowed everything that you have built to end in ruins. Olivia giggled in enjoyment, we had to maintain your legacy regardless of what. I did what I had to. Noah bowed his head a little in Felix's direction and uttered, I have kept your seat warm for you. You may reclaim it any time you want. Noah didn't feel even a little bit saddened or angered that all of his efforts to become the new supreme leader would be in vain. In his eyes, no one was more deserving of this title than Felix and he would gladly hand it over without an ounce of hesitation. Luckily for him, Felix had no interest in it any longer. Nah, you keep it, I have other matters to handle. Felix informed, I have no plans to announce my revival to the public, so I wish that this stays between us. Are you sure? Noah asked. Yes. Well, your secret is fine with me, though I am anticipating your public return. Elder Cyclope chuckled as he stood up, round 2 against the Darkins will sure be fun. Then, he left the gathering, not too interested in staying with the youngsters. After he took off, Felix and the others stayed together for an hour or less before Felix started sending them off until only Olivia, Malak, and Selfie remained. Even Noah and Bodadai left as both of them had plenty of responsibilities to deal with. Bodadai was promoted to a high position in the Wormhole Express Company after his contract with Felix was terminated. Now that he returned, one could only wonder if Bodadai would be Felix's exclusive delivery worm or remain in his post. By the way, where is Sister Asna? Didn't you call for her too? Olivia suddenly asked with an inquisitive tone. Selfie flinched after hearing Asna's name, but she remained silent. Asna won't be around for a while. Felix replied with a forced smile. Ah, I see. Olivia didn't know what happened between Felix and her, but she could see that he wasn't comfortable with the subject, so she dropped it. Did they break up? Meanwhile, Selfie's eyes brightened up in delight, knowing that it should have been impossible for Asna not to attend such an important moment. In her eyes, either Felix met with her before them or something happened between them and their relationship wasn't on the right path. If only she knew what truly happened, one could only wonder if she would still feel joyful at the opportunity or if her kind soul would get in the way. Whatever it was, she also didn't press on the subject. Have you created any other time ability in my absence? Felix asked Selfie with a curious tone. Selfie nodded excitedly like a child who wanted to brag to their parents. I threw myself into my runic studies after you left and I managed to forge 1 lesser and 1 greater time spell. 2 and a greater spell at that. Felix was startled. Mastering a pre-existing time spell was already a challenging task, but to forge a greater grade spell and even master it in less than a century? He always knew that Selfie was a unique breed when it came to a runic understanding, but she still never failed to impress him. I can teach them to you anytime. Selfie offered happily. She used a century for those 2 abilities and she had absolutely no problem with helping Felix master them in a couple of years. For his presence, she would literally do anything and Felix began to pick up on her increased attachment to him. I have a feeling this isn't going to end well. Felix smiled wryly, but he could do nothing about this. If even his death and 1 century of absence weren't enough to kill her emotions about him, nothing he uttered or did was going to do anything. In fact, it might make things even worse. Elves' attachment sure is scary. Lord Loki suggested causally while chewing bubblegum, if you are too annoyed, you can use your illusion domain to erase her intimate emotions towards you. It sure will end this chapter once and for all. Thor supported. He was Team Asna from the start, and while he was a bit of a playboy, he didn't want Felix to betray Asna's trust after everything she did to him. Staring into Selpha's gem-like bewitching loving eyes, Felix soon sighed in frustration within his mind. I don't know, if I am going to do this, she has to be on board with it. I don't want to hurt her like this right after I returned from death. It's just too brutal. 1528 Spreading a rumor. Felix had nothing against Selphie as she was soft, gentle, very nice, and competent. She always treated him right and showed him the respect he deserved from day one, which was everything one could ask for. She was literally a dream girl for every man in the universe. Unfortunately, while he wanted their relationship to stay in friendship, she made it obvious that she desired more even when he had already rejected her directly. She is the only one hurting from this. Felix smiled wryly. In the end, Felix had put Lord Loki's suggestion at the back of his mind, not wanting to start a new problem out of nothing when he had many important matters to handle. After spending more than a couple of days with his friends, catching up on everything and just enjoying their time together through parties, hangouts, and such, Felix finally sent them back home and had the rest of the week to himself. Even when was hanging out with them, he didn't get into relaxation mode at all due to Asna's crisis and Nemo's peculiar situation. His friends had noticed his attitude and questioned him many times about it, but Felix shrugged it off until they gave up on asking him. Is there really no way of reaching out to Candace or Nemo? Felix frowned. He was sitting on the central table with the majority of the tenants. I have tried, but there is no presence of them. Lady Sphinx replied, ever since Candace's wisp disappeared from my consciousness space, we heard nothing from Nemo's side. Felix was informed that 2 decades ago, Candace and the majority of the Void Nation citizens had gone missing. The Ruiner, Miriam, Arthur, and the rest of the councilmen were also gone. They could neither be reached out through the Queen nor found in any territory across the Alliance. It was like they were snatched out of existence. I am afraid this has to be related to Nemo, as no one has such an overbearing authority on the void creatures besides him and the Paragon. Felix didn't like this notion in the slightest. He knew that Nemo still possessed the emotional control of a child, and ever since he was declared dead, he had completely lost it. Felix thought that after his return, he could get things corrected easily. But now? He had no clue what to think anymore. He couldn't even reach out to Nemo and find out what he was doing. The void creatures' numbers have been reduced significantly and continuously over the past 2 decades. Thor narrowed his eyes. Nemo is up to something and we have no clue if it's good or bad. Realizing that only one person could help them at the moment, Felix requested out loud. Lord Koaz, is it possible that you have his location? Felix knew that Lord Kaus had a significant interest in Nemo and there was no way he would let him roam free without tracking him. His assumption was correct. Still, the answer he received didn't solve his problem. I lost his track a long while ago. Lord Kaus's deep cosmic voice resounded across the consciousness space. He used his laws to hinder my vision of him. He is getting smarter. I don't know if I should feel proud or worried. Felix smiled wryly. I think the best way to find him is through announcing your return. Thor suggested, if we can't locate him, we should make him reach out to us. Felix and the others agreed. But, Felix didn't want to alert the Darkins and Lucifer, knowing that being in the dark gave him a tremendous advantage over them. It's best to focus on Lucifer first. Lady Sphinx shared, as long as we secure the merge, we can then deal with other matters. You're right. As much as Felix wanted to find Nemo, he understood that Lucifer must be his number one priority, since if he lost him or such, nothing else would matter. Dealing with him is simple, just spread some rumors about you being spotted in some place, and if he still desires his ascension, he will definitely come by to take a look. Hormungandr suggested. Rumors and Felix coming out publicly were two different things. No one would believe such rumors, since Felix was announced dead longer than a century by now. But for those desperate for him to be alive? They wouldn't hesitate to travel half the universe to check with their own eyes the rumor's legitimacy. That sounds like a plan. Felix agreed. If it was up to him, he would have rather relied on Lord Hades' assistance in locating Lucifer, as he made it obvious that he had everything under his vision. But, Lord Hades hadn't responded to Felix's calls ever since his return, making him understand that this was a one-way connection between them. He would talk to him only if he had achieved the missions he had given him and needed to move up. We at least know that he is on the other side, so we can start the gossip there. Elder Kraken said. They were certain about this since Lord Koaz also had eyes across the universe, and the only blind spot he had was on the other side where the paragon of sin slumbers. Without further ado, Felix and his masters began putting details on their plan. On the other side of the universe, Lucifer could be seen pacing back and forth, his fiery eyes ablaze with determination and a hint of madness as he explained, "I can feel it, my friends. The cosmic clap we experienced was no ordinary event. It was related to him. He has returned." Wendigo and Saurus glanced at each other for an instant before Wendigo waved his hand at his brother, seemingly telling him to handle this lunatic. "Lucifer, you've always had a flair for the dramatic. But, this is taking it too far. Believe me, god damn it." Lucifer grew impatient and angrier. "Both of us share the same destiny. Do you think he will go and die just like that? Don't be foolish. Even if you don't trust my judgment, you should trust my mother's. Why, did she tell you that he has returned?" Wendigo leaned closer with a serious expression. "No, but do you think she will create me 2 times and suffer from the universe's punishment for absolutely nothing?" Lucifer's gaze did not waver as he continued to make his case. While his statements did make some sense, it was not enough to move Saurus and Wendigo. "That vermin has died. I am not too delighted by not being the one killing him personally, but he is dead." Wendigo disclosed sternly, "End of story." "You heard him, now scram," Saurus said. "You." Lucifer was livid at their nonchalant treatment, feeling like he was being taken as a lunatic for reaching out to them with such nonsense. If it wasn't for the fact he needed their help to facilitate the search and battle, he would have never put himself in such a humiliating position. Not wanting to lower his pride and beg them, Lucifer merely excused himself with a frigid look. "What an absolute buffoon!" Saurus chuckled in ridicule. "I feel it," he said. "Feel what? Does he think he and that brat share the same soul or what? Put it to rest." Wendigo yawned. "We just have to keep our distance from him, he seems to be losing it on a daily basis." "Couldn't agree more." A couple of days later, Wendigo and Saurus were forced to eat those words after finding out about a new hot piece of rumor and a short clip spreading in the other side's network. The short clip showed a similar-looking person to Felix captured while he was walking across a busy market on planet Gorena, which was still ruled by the Luminaris race. The footage was seized from a high angle and lasted for a mere 2 seconds before it ended. The title of the footage was, "The Previous Grand Supreme Leader is Alive." This footage alone had more than 50 trillion clicks in less than a couple of minutes of it being posted. 1529 Looking for me? Is this sh*t real? Saurus' eyes widened to the limit while placing them a mere inch away from Felix's foggy face in the clip. "Stop fooling around, it's clearly fake news to get some attraction." Wendigo didn't seem too interested in the clip. Anyone can copy that brat's face and create viral news about him to increase their social media's visibility. "I know that, but this boy's face, albeit unclear, gives me the urge to punch it." Saurus muttered, "Only that brat makes me feel this way." Wendigo rolled his shadowy eyes and ignored him. Whatever, I know that lunatic will most definitely check this out even if there was a 0.001% chance of it being more than a rumor. Saurus dropped the matter for now, knowing that Lucifer would check its legitimacy for them. It's him. As he anticipated, Lucifer didn't have an ounce of doubt in his mind about Felix's identity in the clip. As the moment he looked into his eyes, he sensed the same familiar connection. He wanted at the start to take this information to the Darkins and seek their assistance in taking down Felix, not wanting to take any risks in his second chance. But, he concluded up rejecting the notion after remembering their previous attitude. Evil manifestation. Lucifer used a tiny hidden portion of evil energy, which was stored in Gorena, and manifested his body through it. He had placed his evil energy in many areas around the other side to ensure his freedom of movement. To avoid trouble with the Alliance and the primogenitors, he controlled the evil energy to not spread out again. Even though he had the strength to create massive chaos in the universe in Felix's absence, he decided to remain low-key. The ascension was his end goal, and if creating chaos wasn't going to fulfill it, there was no point in wasting his time and energy. After he disguised himself, he took off in the direction of Gorena's capital city. In less than a couple minutes, he had invaded it and arrived at the busy marketplace, where the video was taken. He closed his eyes for a moment and activated his senses to the limit, unbothered by the noise around him. Unfortunately, his senses failed to pick anything. Did he already leave? The clip was taken not long ago, he can't have walked, fa. Before Lucifer could finish his thought, a hand was placed on his right shoulder out of nowhere. Looking for me? A devilish-like whisper followed soon after, sending a cold shiver down Lucifer's spine after recognizing the voice. Whoosh! Whoosh! Just as he wanted to put some distance, he found himself in a different place. A small dimensional pocket, resembling a pristine, featureless surface floating in the void. Isn't this an interesting situation? Two deities who escaped death facing each other again. Felix remarked casually as he eyed the distressed Lucifer. Lucifer heard him but didn't really register what he said. He was still processing this sudden frightening development. Was I baited to make an appearance? Why? He can't have known about my revival beforehand? Who told him? Do I escape and plan for another opportunity? Many questions roamed Lucifer's mind. Nothing made sense to him as he knew that Felix should have never known about his revival unless the Darkins told him. It was unimaginable for those two to help out Felix with anything. No need to overwork your little brain. Felix mentioned, I brought you here to give you a chance of ascension and fulfill your destiny. Lucifer eyed Felix coldly for a few moments before finally breaking his silence. Are you taking me for a joke? Always have been, but trust me, not this time. Felix smiled sincerely, I want you to attempt to possess my body and ascend, and if you succeed, you will have a clear path to godhood as you have envisioned. Felix had absolutely no clue how the ascension process worked, and if it was the same as shown in Lucifer's illusion, then he wanted him to kickstart the process again. Only this time, their souls would clash for real. I don't know if you have hit your head, but there is no way I am trusting a single word coming out of your lips. Lucifer sneered, I am content with knowing you are alive for now. We will meet again in the future. Lucifer prepared to take his leave, having no contemplated of staying here for another second. He was in a different space and without any preparation, making him on the weaker side. Now, with an actual confirmation, he could ally with the Darkins again and use them to ease the battle if just by a little. Unfortunately, after he closed his eyes and opened them again, he found himself still in the same position. He knitted his eyebrows in disgruntlement and attempted again to manifest his consciousness in a different evil energy cloud. Alas, he kept opening and closing his eyes until he seemed like he was blinking, but still no results. What did you, am I in an illusion? Lucifer dropped the tough act immediately and began looking around him with a distressed look. His first assumption was an illusion, but he recalled that his mother told him that he was significantly resistant to them after she used a piece of her consciousness to revive him. You wish it was an illusion? Felix smiled as he approached him calmly. Stay away. Lucifer jumped backward and launched 2 condensed spears of crimson evil energy. As they approached Felix, he didn't bother to use an ability to block them. He merely kept walking forward and the spear's trajectory was altered against their will, flying past him like he was protected by an invisible untouchable aura. You. When Lucifer sensed the aura, his blood turned cold and his grey face turned as white as a piece of paper. As Felix got closer to him, the aura became more overpowering until it completely encompassed Lucifer. Thud. His knees and arms slammed against the ground, leaving him in a dog posture, trying his best to resist the overbearing spiritual pressure. It can't be, this must be an illusion, must be. Lucifer refused to believe the reality before him no matter what. Who could blame him? Felix was overpowering him with nothing but spiritual pressure, which shouldn't have been possible when deity's spiritual pressure was considered the peak in the universe. I know what you are thinking. Felix stopped in front of him and sat on the ground. He rested a hand above his knee, taking a comfortable position while Lucifer was fighting for his life to even raise his head. You must be thinking that it's impossible for me to possess a higher grade of spiritual pressure than deities and this is purely an illusion. Felix chuckled as he waved his index finger up, causing Lucifer's head to lift up immediately. He was sweating all over and his facial structure seemed to be under 1,000,000 tons of gravity force. Unfortunately for you, this is as real as it could get. Felix smiled, this small dimension is on total spiritual lockdown, making it impossible for any soul or a wisp to enter or leave. So, are you going to give yourself a chance and ascend through me, or should I erase your existence again? While Felix was finishing the last part of the sentence, a small orb of pitch-black void domain manifested above his palm and hovered there, menacingly. 1530 must find the true method. He wasn't really going to use it on him since it would do nothing but erase his body and current consciousness, giving him a chance to be revived in a different place where evil energy existed. But Lucifer didn't know that. He felt his bones twitch in fear at the sight of the void domain, believing that it was the same ability used to erase him before. Mother won't revive me again if I die. I don't know why he wanted me to possess his body, but I have no choice but to accept. Lucifer knew that his fate was no longer in his hands. The fact that Felix's spiritual pressure was empowering him was enough to make any action or thought invalid. But, how am I supposed to win against him in a spiritual battle? Lucifer's expression wasn't so good. Even if he wanted to fight it off with Felix and possess his body, he wasn't delusional to believe that he would win in a spiritual battle after this display of power difference. Chop, chop, I don't have all day. Felix pressed while bringing the hovering minimized void domain near Lucifer's face, causing him to grimace in utter terror. I will do it. I will do it. Just get that thing away from me. Lucifer replied telepathically with an agitated tone. That's more like it. Felix snapped his finger and the void domain disappeared. Then, he smiled coldly, I will release you, but don't try anything foolish. My spiritual pressure still has the pocket dimension on lockdown. Fine mother ***. You want a spiritual battle? You got it. Left with no options, Lucifer transformed himself into a malevolent cloud of dark energy the moment Felix released his pressure on him. With a sinister purpose, he aimed to invade Felix's body. As Lucifer descended upon Felix, his dark cloud seeped into every pore, engulfing him in its suffocating embrace until it disappeared completely. Felix had everything in control as the moment Lucifer attempted to be silly, he could easily freeze him with his spiritual pressure. Luckily, Lucifer was smarter than that and actually stuck with the plan, having his consciousness manifest in Felix's consciousness space. What the ***c? However, the moment he opened his eyes, his soul almost escaped from his body in utter fright at the baffling scene before him. In the center of the consciousness space, there stood Felix, resolute and poised, surrounded by 8 powerful and imposing figures. All of them radiated an aura of a deity, signifying their status as primogenitors, masters of their respective domains. Lucifer's initial shock and fright were palpable. He had expected to find a solitary mind to subdue, not a gathering of such formidable entities. To make matters worse, they were seated in luxurious chairs arranged like spectators at a grand event and held a range of refreshments from popcorn to glasses of alcohol as if they were here for an evening of entertainment. Thor regarded Lucifer with a faint grin, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. Meanwhile, Lady Sphinx, reclined comfortably in her chair with a note in hand, seemingly wanting to study the upcoming ascension process. "Don't pay them any attention and let's begin," Felix said casually. "Don't pay them attention." If looks could kill, Felix would have already dropped dead. How could Lucifer ignore the existence of 8 primogenitors staring at him like he was a clown in a freak show? To make matters worse, he understood that the moment he showed a chance of winning against Felix somehow, they would all collapse on him. In other words, "I am done for." Despair dominated Lucifer's visage. Feeling absolutely hopeless, he didn't even bother to attempt the ascension anymore, knowing that the only reason he was still alive was because of it. As he expected, Felix got irritated after he noticed that Lucifer wasn't planning to make a move. "What are you waiting for? I am done playing your game." Lucifer sat down on the ground with a resolved expression. "If you want to kill me, get it over with." He wanted to maintain the last bit of dignity, not for his sake, but for the sake of his mother. "Stop being childish and let's do this," Felix remarked. "Childish? F***CKU." Lucifer twisted his head to the side, acting like a pouting girlfriend. Felix twisted to look at his masters for advice and they shrugged their shoulders. The ascension process wasn't simple in the slightest and Felix didn't dare make a move before fully understanding what he was getting into. For example, was he required to just merge souls? Or he had to eliminate Lucifer's consciousness and then take over his soul? Or worse, take possession of his evil energy while keeping his consciousness alive within him? There were so many methods and unless Lucifer made the first move, he wouldn't know which one to choose. Lord Hades hadn't fully told him the details, which meant this situation was also new to him. So, Felix decided to switch his way of handling things. "I have given you a chance to die a graceful death and you spat on my face." Felix narrowed his eyes coldly as he walked in the direction of Lucifer. "I should have gone with violence from the start." He was no longer willing to wait for cooperation, instead, he intended to extract information by any means necessary. "Do your best." Lucifer sneered coldly. He had no clue why Felix was adamant about his ascension and he had no plans of sharing the method with him even if he went through the most gruesome torture. "Don't worry, I will give you my best." Felix used his spiritual pressure to lift Lucifer's body into the air and extended his limbs far apart until they were on the verge of being torn. Still, Lucifer didn't release a single groan. In fact, he was showing a taunting smile like no matter what Felix did to him wouldn't affect him much. He wasn't acting like this for no reason. As the incarnation of evil energy, pain was nothing more than a normal sensation to him. "Let's see if you will keep the tough act after this." Felix showed him a gentle smile while manifesting a pitch-black flame on top of his finger. Lucifer raised an eyebrow in surprise as he had never seen before a black flame. Not even Unigens recognized the black flames, don't even mention him. That's right, Felix had employed his illusion domain to recreate a similar flame to the black celestial flames with the same effects. "You have no clue how much effort it took me to recreate this." Felix spoke as he released the tiny black flame at Lucifer. "Be honored, you are the first person to experience a copy of celestial black flames." The instant the black flame touched Lucifer, it spread out akin to wildfires across his entire body until he mirrored a flaming torch. Lucifer's anguished cries echoed through the consciousness space, a heart-wrenching symphony of torment that was loud enough it caused small waves to emerge on the consciousness ocean. Once proud and defiant demeanor had crumbled, replaced by the sheer agony inflicted upon him. The celestial black flames that licked at his form consumed not only his physical essence but also his very soul. It was potent enough to cause even Unigens to feel the pain. As Felix watched Lucifer wiggle and scream until his vocal cords were about to snap, he rubbed his chin thoughtfully. The pain seems similar to that of Duke Humphrey, but it still feels like something crucial is missing. Memories of his time spent with Duke Humphrey during his last months in the heavenly plane soon came back to him. A month ago in the heavenly plane. Please. Please. I will do anything. Aik. Please, I beg you. Let me SHSSS, I am trying to study here. Above an imposing memorial platform that dominated the city square with its colossal size, Duke Humphrey was seen chained in a star shape to two metallic pillars. Black flames danced around him, their ethereal tendrils wrapping his form in an unrelenting embrace. Despite the agony that coursed through his being, Duke Humphrey's cries and pleas were silenced by a sound cancellation bubble that enveloped the pillars. This entire sight was Felix's idea to punish Duke Humphrey while also warning everyone else about the consequences of betraying the spirit realm. Sob, sob, Godfather, save me, someone save me. Seated nearby, Felix was immersed in his work, appearing unperturbed by the screams and begs of his captive companion. He had gotten used to it by now as he had been spending almost a couple hours every day around him to study the celestial black flames. I have twisted into a wisp, lost my celestial energy, and still, the black flames are burning. Felix muttered. Lord Hades uttered that it shouldn't be possible with white flames as they need celestial energy to keep burning. So, what's the deal with this? I know. I know the answer. Just free me, arg. And, I will tell you, a. Felix rolled his eyes at his inability to finish a single sentence and replied, even the black flames don't believe your bullsh*. Just be quiet and let me study. 1531 If I am not winning, no one will win. With the portal to the Eternal Kingdom sealed, Asna's core couldn't absorb celestial energy even if it wanted, leaving Felix without an ounce of energy to study. The only thing left was this bizarre ever-burning black flames, and he knew that copying its effects would help him in the long run. So, he spent months and months studying the black flames until he could reproduce a decent copy. Alas, he wasn't too satisfied with the results. Is my lack of understanding of the celestial energy the reason? He thought out loud as he stared at the burning Lucifer whose screams engulfed the entire consciousness space. If you had brought back some of that celestial energy, I could have run some experiments on it and figured it out. Lady Sphinx shared. She was quite fascinated by the celestial black flames after hearing that they could burn forever without needing any connection with the owner. I don't know what you guys are on about, isn't it working just fine? Thor asked with a confused tone as he listened to Lucifer's cries keep intensifying. Felix shook his head and answered, the effect is quite similar, but I don't feel any sort of celestialness from it. It feels like a man-made product, and I know that the illusion domain can copy anything in reality to perfection. So, if I truly managed to copy the real celestial black flames, I would know it straight away. Well, you can figure it out later on. I think the demon is ready to cooperate. Hormungandr said while pointing his finger at Lucifer. He had screamed so loud and hard before, his voice was barely audible now. Still, Felix and the others managed to read what he was mouthing in silence. I will do it. That's the spirit. Felix released Lucifer from the torture with a snap of a finger, causing him to drop into the ocean and remain lying on its peaceful surface without a single twitch. His face was absolutely drained out of color, like he had just survived a trip to the 9th level of hell. Now, let's start all over. Felix crouched next to him and asked. Shall we begin the ascension process? Lucifer nodded his head a little, having no energy to speak or fight back. The black flames had burned his soul to an absolute crisp and he could not muster an ounce of energy to even stand up, don't even mention fighting against Felix in the merge. Is this really my destiny, mother? Lucifer murmured with hazy eyes, answer me, how was I ever supposed to win against him and ascend? You always knew everything, was this in your vision as well? Doubts began to appear in Lucifer's mind about his mother's true motives. Ever since she created him, she always told him that he was destined to be the demon god and rule over the universe and its realms. All he had to do was possess his twin soulmate's body and the universe would be his own. But, in both battles against Felix, he recognized that he wasn't even close to his strength. There was such a clear disparity between them, that he doubted if he ever had a chance at all. Even the illusion resistance was deemed futile against the celestial black flames due to the pain of being in a different realm. So, how could this be his true destiny? Is this how my life was always supposed to end? Lucifer glanced at Felix from the side and thought to himself. Was my destiny to merge with him and get erased, allowing him to ascend? Mother, answer me. As much as Lucifer was somewhat of a lunatic, he wasn't an idiot in the slightest. He realized that his mother was never on his side and everything she spewed at him was pure utter bullshit. In his mind, if she was on his side, she could have done much more to prepare him against Felix. After all, she was the paragon of sins and there was no way she would send him to his damnation unprepared unless she wanted it to happen. If this is how death shall come, then I will gladly make sure none of us win anything from this. In a last-ditch effort to thwart Felix's plan of ascension and to spite his mother's, Lucifer summoned all the dark, malevolent power he could muster. His eyes burned with an unholy fire as he channeled his spiritual prowess into one final move, one final action. Soul implosion. A surge of chaotic energy emanated from Lucifer's form, and his very essence seemed to tremble with the malefic force he was about to unleash. Whoosh! Whoosh! The peaceful consciousness ocean was no more as waves raged back and forth in response to this insane gathering of spiritual energy. No! Felix yelled with a livid expression as he tried his absolute best to void Lucifer's attempt at self-imploding his soul. Alas, it was too late. The moment someone made a decision to implode his soul, it was close to impossible to stop them since they were the sole owners of their souls. This was the reason Felix managed to pull off soul implosion against Asna before she could completely merge with his soul. Lord Hades might be able to stop it, but he had no powers to take actions outside of the spirit realm with his current weakened state. Ignore him and reinforce your soul. Thor yelled at Felix in anger, understanding that Felix was merely wasting his energy on the inevitable when his own soul was in danger. No. Felix ignored him and kept channeling everything he had to keep Lucifer's soul intact against his own will. How could he watch his only method to rescue Asna evaporate right in front of him? In his eyes, what's the point of living if the one he loved the most wasn't by his side? Ha ha ha, it's hopeless, just give it up. Lucifer chuckled with great difficulty as he enjoyed Felix's utter despair. He had no idea why Felix was this desperate for the ascension, but he was more than happy to make this decision and watch him squirm hopelessly just like he did to him. Crack! 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 Meanwhile, inside Lucifer's consciousness space, the soul barrier kept shattering rapidly even when Felix's spiritual pressure was trying its best to maintain its form. While this was happening, at the depth of the void realm on the other side, a pair of pink eyes snapped open and glanced in the direction of Lucifer and Felix. How troublesome, he can neither win nor lose properly. The paragon of sins uttered with an irked tone. Fortunately, I had countermeasures for this scenario. She soon closed her eyes again, making it impossible to know if she was slumbering or simply lying low. Meanwhile, Felix could be seen teetering on the precipice of annihilation, his once unwavering resolve faltering. His plan of ascension hung in the balance, and the consequences of Lucifer's desperate act threatened to unravel everything he had worked toward. It wasn't like he forgot about soul implosion, but even if he considered it as an option, there was really nothing much he could do to prepare against it. Crack! Crack K! Haha, your expression made everything worth it. Lucifer mocked while staring coldly at Felix's twisted expression. Felix also knew deep down that the situation was doomed and that only a second was left or even less before the soul barrier shattered completely. Felix! Reinforce! Lady Sphinx yelled at the last second, forcing Felix at last to switch his focus back on his own soul barrier reflexively. It was like he could not go against her voice, like a mother scolding her child, and all they could was listen. When the primogenitors saw this, only then did they sigh in relief and anticipated for the explosion. It wasn't like they weren't using their own spiritual prowess to defend Felix's soul barrier, it was just too weak compared to Felix. After all, they were mere wisps of consciousness and had a fraction of their main consciousness spiritual prowess. However, they anticipated and waited, yet, nothing happened. Ha ha, ha, ha. Even Lucifer's dying laughter became softer and softer until he departed completely silent with a stunned expression. He gazed at Felix and he looked at him back, both sharing the same dumbfounded look, seemingly asking each other, if this was their doing. When Lucifer and Felix glanced inside his consciousness space, wanting to check on the source of such abnormality, they were left utterly astounded by the sight before them. 1532 Mother. There, above the pacified consciousness ocean's surface, the paragon of sins materialized before Felix and Lucifer in a breathtaking and alluring form. She appeared as a mature woman of mesmerizing beauty, an embodiment of temptation and power. Her skin, a shade of delicate violet, exuded an otherworldly allure. Her figure was nothing short of perfect, with supple curves and an air of seduction that seemed to radiate from her every move. Her dark red hair cascaded down to dark purple, flowing like a waterfall of shadows. If she was put next to a lineup of gorgeous succubi, they would all seem like a cheap failed product before the real thing. Two elegant horns protruded gracefully from her forehead, curving upward with an alluring mystique. Above her ample chest, a strange tattoo adorned her skin, dark and intricate, displaying 7 animalistic logos etched with enigmatic ink. Yet, her eyes were the most captivating feature, utterly pupilless and as black as the void itself. They held a profound and ancient wisdom, yet concealed depths of secrets and desires. When Lucifer and Felix made eye contact with them, they seemed to have lost their way in a labyrinth of illusions even when Felix was immune to them. She was the true embodiment of desire, and her entire presence would make anyone fold into the ground akin to a piece of cloth. Her lips, plump and pink, suddenly parted open slightly, showing a set of perfect crystal white teeth, before she uttered, "Boys, why can't you play nice and follow the script?" Her voice was like a magical melody, even Asna's angelic voice couldn't match up to it. Only when Lucifer heard this voice did he break out of his daze and yell out loud, "Mother! Mother! Mother!" It took Felix less than a millisecond to have his heart turn into a piece of ice after realizing the woman's identity. Even the primogenitors were left stunned, especially Lord Koaz, who couldn't take his eyes off her the moment he saw her. "My child, were you doubting me? I have created you with a small part of my soul, and this is my reward? Self-implosion." The paragon questioned with a soft, confused tone as she floated slowly in the direction of Lucifer. Created him with a part of her soul. No wonder he possessed a soul barrier now compared to his earlier birth, and how it was possible for the paragon to stop the implosion. Felix's gaze seemed to have some clarity in them. During his first fight with Lucifer, he merely had to kill his consciousness since he didn't possess a soul. But ever since he met him again, he showed signs of possessing a spirit barrier, and Felix didn't think much of it at the time, thinking that it was a condition to revive him or something. "No. No. I wouldn't dare, I Lucifer knelt down immediately, fright and dread were covering his face. He couldn't believe that he had bad-mouthed his mother in her presence and actually wanted to blow his spirit and go against her plans. Everything he thought before about her was erased from his memory. In his eyes, the fact she showed herself implied that she always had his back, and if he went ahead with the merge and failed, she would have assisted him. "Is that so?" The paragon smiled softly. I guess the ascension process is in order. Yes. Yes. Lucifer nodded his head rapidly in agitation and a bit of excitement, wanting to move out of the soul implosion subject as fast as possible. Good, you may begin. Without an ounce of hesitation, Lucifer turned to face Felix with a cold look and then launched himself while his form was writhing and contorting until it became a cloud of pure evil energy. With the presence of the paragon of sins, Felix didn't dare let Lucifer get the best out of him, understanding that the scales of power weren't in his favor any longer. As he expected, the moment he utilized his overpowered spiritual pressure to block Lucifer, the paragon shook her head in a gentle manner while clicking her tongue in disapproval. "Ts, ts, ts, I want a fair spiritual battle between you children." When she was done speaking, Felix felt like his spiritual pressure was weakened somehow until it was perfectly matched with Lucifer. How? Felix watched with a stunned expression as Lucifer charged through his spiritual pressure while laughing out loud. "Not so tough now, hey!" Boom! Lucifer crashed into Felix and covered him from head to toe with crimson evil energy until he started to resemble a walking devil. Then, he bellowed, "Merge!" Felix attempted to escape from Lucifer's clutches, but alas, no matter what he used, he seemed like he had glued himself to his skin. In the meantime, Lucifer was attacking Felix's consciousness with evil thoughts, wanting to mess with his mental strength and weaken it. It seemed like it was working just fine as Felix's mind was consumed with the worst possible thoughts, filled with self-hatred, frustration, and just pure anger at everyone who wronged him. "That's it. Falter to those thoughts." Lucifer kept whispering in his ears with a devilish grin while he was devouring his consciousness. With his evil energy in power and spiritual pressure equal to Felix, it seemed like the ascension was in his pocket. This was what he thought, but alas, Felix was much sneakier to fall like this. "So, that's how it works? I just need to devour your consciousness." Felix's entire restless and worried demeanor was gone, replaced by a cold sinister smile etched across his face. Before Lucifer could react, Felix muttered, "Celestial black flames." Whoosh! Just like a match thrown into a fireplace filled with gasoline, Felix and Lucifer were both lit in raging black flames. Immediately, Lucifer let out a heart-wrenching scream after he was hit with the same dreadful pain as before. Meanwhile, Felix was barely affected since the flames were created out of illusion and he was immune to them. While Lucifer was growing weaker and weaker, Felix took advantage of the situation to start devouring his consciousness in a similar manner. Felix had to act like he was on the weaker side to make sure that Lucifer truly kicked off the ascension process for real. Otherwise, he had no clue if he would ask for more help from the paragon and Felix couldn't afford it. As for the evil thoughts, Felix was already living with them constantly in his mind the moment Asna was taken off him, and no matter what Lucifer did, they wouldn't affect his sole chance to ascend and save his woman. "Mother! Help me!" As expected, the moment Lucifer began feeling like he was on the losing side, he threw a rope at the paragon and hoped that she would pull him to safety. Alas, the paragon of sins didn't pay heads to the rope, staring at him with the same gentle look. "I believe in you," she said. Her encouraging words did absolutely nothing but make Lucifer feel even sh**er. He was in constant agony and his consciousness was slowly but surely getting consumed in the exact way he showed Felix. "Mother! I can't hold it any longer. Arg!" Lucifer kept screaming while his blurred eyes focused on his mother. She seemed gentle like a spring breeze, but her smile was absolutely devoid of any emotions. "Fighting!" She cheered like a teenage girl with her fists in the air, seemingly taking this entire life and death situation as a joke. "Mother!" This image shattered Lucifer's heart into pieces yet again. He believed before that his mother had betrayed him and even wanted to off himself, but when she showed up, his belief in her was restored, especially when she helped him deal with Felix's spiritual pressure. Now, He knew, no, he was certain, that he was nothing but a toy in his mother's eyes, an instrument to attain her goal. Whether he succeeded or failed the ascension, her goal would be achieved regardless. 1533 Accept me as me. Felix and the tenants were also left taken back by the paragon's nonchalant attitude, thinking before that she would have supported Lucifer in his ascension. Why is she watching? Isn't Lucifer's ascension her goal? Thor frowned at the sight of the paragon cheering at the sidelines while her son was getting absolutely obliterated. Who knows what runs in her head? Lady Sphinx replied with a solemn tone, I am starting to think that she has a different agenda than we theorized. She didn't know what it was, but she was certain that Felix's Orlok-Fear's rise was the key and she didn't care which one succeeded. Meanwhile, Felix dropped those useless thoughts and focused purely on devouring Lucifer, pushing relentlessly, and steadily overpowering his resistance. Lucifer's agonized voice was growing softer and softer while his eyes seemed to turn unfocused. His consciousness was on its last leg, and Felix didn't show an ounce of mercy as he unleashed the full force of his celestial flames, causing his resistance to drop even further. In the end, Lucifer's cloudy and somewhat teary eyes reflected the paragon's emotionless enchanting smile. He wanted to see if she would show at least a bit of emotion for his departure, but alas, she was looking at him the same as someone staring at a white wall. Manipulative B***, tch. With his last ounce of consciousness and energy, he cursed her in his mind and then closed his eyes forever. Whoosh! His once formidable consciousness withered away until there was nothing left but a faint whisper. The moment he was gone, neither the evil energy surrounding Felix disappeared nor his soul barrier collapsed. Instead, the evil energy mist seemed to consider Felix as its new host and started to penetrate his pores, merging with his essence. The same transformation was happening on his body outside of the consciousness space as he was surrounded by a vortex of crimson mist. They thought they could take my woman without consequences. Now I have the power to make them pay for every wrong they've done. I would burn the entire kingdom to the ground if had to. I could erase everyone with a thought, wipe them from existence, and reshape reality according to my whims. Why waste time on caring about the Alliance and its citizens? What have they ever done for me? Just rule them like slaves befitting of their status. Many evil thoughts of different properties invaded Felix's mind akin to a plague, making it impossible for him to think of anything positive. Even his emotions and body were reacting to those evil thoughts, seemingly trying to reset his entire personality to fit the true nature of evil energy. This was the corruption process all demons had gone through. No. That's not me. I won't allow it. Felix understood what was happening and went against the stream, not allowing the evil energy to corrupt his mind and body. How could he allow it when he knew that he would turn into the biggest villain the universe had ever known with a strength capable of putting even primogenitors in their place? Felix refused to let his autonomy get affected by anything ever again after what happened to him in the spirit realm. Who could blame him? How could a corrupted demon understand love and anything related to such emotions? He had seen how demons behaved and how their emotions weren't in their control at all. Felix would rather not accept the evil energy and seek a different method of rise than become a slave of his own desires and evil thoughts. I am me. Accept it as it is or F***ck off. He bellowed furiously while trying his best to stop the transformation from happening, making it harder and harder for the evil energy to merge with him. Oh ho ho, you want the powers of evil energy but not its side effects. The paragon chuckled. It won't be an easy fight. As she mentioned, the evil energy refused to bow down to Felix's wishes and kept trying to force both the transformation and the mind change. With Felix going against the stream, the peaceful transformation was no more as he felt like his mind was on brink of collapsing on itself. It was like two personalities were attempting to gain control over it and both were using whatever it took to win it over. Since Felix was the only one feeling the brunt of this confrontation, the evil energy seemed to gain the upper hand. Just give in, you will be more strong than ever, you will be able to dominate the entire universe without such pathetic emotions holding you back, just give in. I said F***ck off. To cancel off some of the loudest evil thoughts, Felix kept roaring at the top of his lungs as he used whatever willpower, determination, and resolve he had built over his entire rough journey, to keep nullifying the transformation. Pain? He was used to it. Will? He was doing all of this to save Asna, and it wouldn't matter anymore if he appeared before her as a corrupted demon without an ounce of love and attachment in his black heart. So, no. Felix wasn't going to let this transformation go through no matter what unless the evil energy decided to bow its head to his wishes. It's working. The evil energy is being pushed out of his body. Thor exclaimed with a delighted tone at the sight of Felix's pores sweating the crimson mist back out. You can do it, kid. Fight it off. You have reached this far, don't let anything steal your glory from you. The rest of the tenants were all on Felix's side in this battle. They understood full well that Felix's future would end the moment he gave in to the evil energy's control. Eyes were bloodshot, mouth wide open, releasing the loudest roars Felix had ever produced, and a twisted ugly expression that screamed of utter defiance. Felix resisted the evil thoughts, the pain, the suffering, everything, and the evil energy seemed like it was fearing at his madness. No one had ever resisted its pollution like this. It seemed like its final instincts were kicking off, that if it didn't abide by Felix's wishes, the transformation wouldn't go through and it would be erased from existence. After all, it wouldn't have any owner anymore. The evil energy was like a bloodline at this moment. It was operating only on its survival instincts even though it possessed no longer an active consciousness. When someone or something operating on instinct has either the choice of death or getting his way, they always choose survival. And so, the rampaging evil thoughts began to diminish slowly but surely until Felix's mind was completely free of them. That's what I thought, Felix remarked coldly and stopped resisting the transformation, allowing the merge to continue. This time, the evil energy was well behaved. Not bad at all. The paragon showed a faint pleased smile, which was divine enough to cause empires to fall under her grace. Felix didn't even hear her as his body was undergoing a true transformation resembling that of replacing a bloodline. In less than a couple of minutes, the crimson vortex seemed to die down, leaving behind a scattering cloud around Felix, showing only his silhouette. Felix neither passed out nor felt any type of weakness after the transformation was completed. Instead, he felt more alive than ever. With a single step forward, Felix emerged from the crimson mist with a completely different appearance, indicating the momentous changes within him. His once colorful hair had regained its deep crimson hue, cascading down his back in long, flowing waves. Crimson mist seemed to be released at the edges, making it seem like his hair was made out of red clouds. His eyes, once pale and blue, had turned a brilliant shade of golden, gleaming with celestial intensity. Yet perhaps the most striking transformation was the return of his demonic horns and skin color. His horns jutted proudly from his forehead, appearing more demonic and frightening than Lord Shiva's horns, while his skin took a slightly darker, more vibrant tone. With every step he took, the green ground beneath him seemed to get sapped out of its life like he was the Grim Reaper walking in his flesh. So, this is the rise he always blabbered about? I barely feel a difference in my physical strength. Felix sneered coldly while eyeing his dark pointy demonic nails. As expected, this is merely the first ingredient and the true ascension is far, far off. 1534 Manipulative Vixen. Felix expected that he would get at least some enhancement to his strength, but he ended up disappointed. If you want to get your strength improved, you only need to devour purities from powerful beings. Suddenly, the paragon of sins appeared in front of Felix and whispered in his ears as she leaned forward. Like Yggdrasil and Quetzalcoatl. Her voice and smell were so alluring, that even Felix with his mastery over his desires couldn't help but feel his lust awakening like nothing before. Whoosh! He swiftly jumped back, putting some distance between them, not liking the feeling one bit. "What's your deal?" He asked a question that summed up his entire relationship with the Paragon of Sins. It was clear to him that his story had begun with the Paragon of Sins long before he was even born, since the demon's existence was traced back more than 10 million years. His entire race wasn't even born yet, don't even mention him. With a single step forward in the air, the Paragon appeared in front of Felix again. But this time, he was unable to get away from her. "Crack, crack. I don't have much time, so how about we have some fun instead?" The Paragon smiled charmingly as she glanced at the soul barrier starting to crack again. Since Lucifer's consciousness was gone, the soul was more or less inhabitable, and if she wanted to keep it together, she had to leave her wisp in it. Clearly, she wasn't too interested in doing that. "What are you trying to do?" Felix uttered coldly, but a hint of nervousness was seen in his eyes as he was truly trying his best to free himself, but to no avail. She was using merely her spiritual pressure, which was still many levels higher than Felix's even after his latest upgrade. After all, he was before a real Unigen and his spiritual pressure had yet to reach that level. Being able to dominate primogenitors was totally different than matching a Unigen's spiritual pressure. "As I said, fun." The Paragon's eyes suddenly gleamed with pink color, matching with the symbol of a goat inked on her chest. "Don't look into her eyes!" Lord Kaos shouted, showing a rare emotional outbreak. When even Lord Kaos, the stern and expressionless, reacted like this, the tenants couldn't help but feel tense. Alas, it was already too late and Felix's golden eyes were left affixed on the Paragon's, appearing like he was enchanted by a love potion. "Give me a kiss," the Paragon requested while putting her right cheek next to Felix's lips. "No," Felix uttered, but his lips were already touching her cheek, making her chuckle in amusement. As for Felix, the moment he kissed her, his body got insanely hot and the blood rushed to his little general. It was like his lust had imploded and his mind wouldn't be settled unless he eased his desire. "Looks like your love for the missus isn't that deep." The Paragon clicked her tongue in criticism, yet she still sounded more seductive than all succubi combined. "A mere kiss made you like this, I wonder if you would turn into a slave if we had some fun together under the sheets." Immediately after this thought was installed in his mind, Felix felt two emotions arising with him, anticipation like his body wanted it to happen more than anything, and anger. He was furious at no one but himself, feeling like he was letting his trust down by allowing his sexual desires to control him like this. Although he was before the Paragon of Sins herself, Felix didn't make any excuses. "I don't know what's your deal with me, but I am not playing your game," Felix said with a frigid tone, "so, just do what you want or f*ck off." There wasn't much for Felix or his tenants to do against the Paragon of Sins. All of them understood that they were under her mercy and if she wanted, most of them wouldn't make it to see the next day. If it was like this, Felix would rather maintain his dignity instead of falling into her games. You have always been a haughty, easily triggered." The Paragon chuckled while poking Felix in the nose, not taking his insult to heart. "What are you on about?" Felix frowned, having no clue what she was talking about. He had a feeling that she was talking with an old friend, which was ludicrous in his eyes, considering that he had never met her once in both of his lives. Crack! Crack! Unfortunately, time seemed to have run out between them as the soul barrier was on the brink of collapsing on them. Before Felix could react, the Paragon leaned in closer to Felix's face and gave him a soft peck on the lips. Then, she whispered in his ears while her eyes were looking into the sky, "I will be awaiting you, don't take forever. But also, don't come unprepared, I won't show mercy." Shatter! The soul barrier came falling down the instant she finished her sentence, forcing Felix to glance upward reflexively. When he looked back down, the Paragon was already gone and he had returned to his consciousness space in a seamless manner like he was never inside Lucifer's soul. Silence. The consciousness space was never so silent before, as everyone was staring at Felix with all kinds of mixed emotions. They could see that he was flustered and flabbergasted, like he had no clue if he should react to the kiss or what she said during it. "Felix, are you okay?" Lady Sphinx was the first to make a move, appearing next to him and asking for his well-being. "I feel like I got abused," Felix muttered while wiping the paragon's bits of juices out of his lips. "You should feel glad you came out of this with an unwanted kiss." Lord Koaz interjected coldly, "That calculating vixen could have ruined you if she wanted." Felix knew that he was right. The paragon had kissed him after removing her lust laws on him, which made him feel like he had been kissed by a goddess. While anyone would kill to be in his spot, he didn't feel an ounce of joy or excitement from the kiss. The same couldn't be said if she still had her law activated, and Felix dreaded the thought of what would have happened. "Sounds like your history with her is quite deep." Thor tried to take advantage of the situation to get some answers from him. "Is it possible to know about it? It might help us in the future." Everyone's ears perked up in intrigue, even the other lords. Alas, Lord Koaz gave them the same emotionless look and broke into a misty fog, leaving them hanging. Tisk, she must have broken his feelings or something. Thor clicked his tongue. After everyone witnessed the paragon's playful and nonchalant charming behavior, they firmly believed that Lord Koaz and her shared a romantic history between them, which ended badly for his side. "She is way too dangerous and unpredictable." Hormungandr knitted his eyebrows. "He is right, Felix had gotten lucky with just a kiss. I doubt she would have killed me." Felix replied with an annoyed tone. "She just wanted to mess with me before she left." "True, we should also take anything she uttered with a grain of salt." Lady Sphinx advised, "We don't know if she was trying to bewilder you or she really meant everything she said." Lady Sphinx was speaking about the paragon's statements, where she made it sound like she shared a relationship with Felix in the past. In reality, she could have uttered it to play with Felix's mind. "There is only one person who can help us find the truth." Felix looked into the sky and called out loud, "Lord Hades! I know you have seen everything. I think it's time to let us on the specifics of the next part of the elevation plan." 1535 Evil Energy's Side Effect. Immediately after, a spectral mirror manifested in front of them and its surface began to ripple, like a stone thrown into a still pond. Slowly, the ripples coalesced into a swirling vortex of dark, ethereal mist. From within the depths of the mirror, a pair of piercing, otherworldly eyes emerged. Lord Hades' presence loomed large, even within the confined space of the mirror, causing all the tenants to show respectful and solemn expressions. Before the primogenitors could greet him, Lord Hades' voice rumbled, deep and commanding as if it echoed from the depths of the underworld. "I have no clue what's going in her mind, and don't bother asking me about it. As for the next part, you will need to devour the false Unigen's core. As you have just witnessed, the 7 sins laws are too powerful against mortals with desires. If you attempted to devour the false Unigen's core, you would end up dead without knowing how." Seeing that Lord Hades wasn't wasting time with empty talks, Felix dropped the subject related to the paragon of sins. "I require your guidance then." Felix narrowed his eyes. How is it possible to gain immunity or at least a decent resistance against the 7 sins? After what the paragon of sins put him through, Felix had absolutely no interest in taking down Nemo's alter ego without proper preparation. "That's for you to solve," Lord Hades remarked calmly before shutting down the mirror, not staying for even half a minute straight. He didn't even give Felix a chance to ask him about the paragon's statement of waiting for Felix's arrival, like she was certain he would come to find her later. While Felix had absolutely no thought of ever getting close to that vixen, he was slightly concerned that his path of ascension would end up with dealing with her again. Well, he didn't help much. But, it's understandable. Lady Sphinx disclosed, "This is new grounds we are treading on, and he doesn't want to give you bad advice." Lord Hades only led the way if he was somewhat certain about the results. In the case of Lucifer, he connected the dots and understood that there was a high possibility of Felix merging successfully with the evil energy and becoming its new owner. However, he refrained from telling Felix about the exact method since he also was ignorant about it. In other words, he would merely keep giving Felix an outline of the plan and it was up to him to fill in the details and deal with its challenges. "I think our best chance is Nimmo," Thor mentioned. "While he isn't as powerful as his alter ego or knows much about his abilities, I think it's possible to take advantage of his immunities." "How so?" Felix raised an eyebrow. "I don't know, you can see if it's possible to merge with him or have him transform into a wearable suit or something." Thor shrugged his shoulders. "While your ideas do sound a bit too unrealistic, I can see a possibility." Lady Sphinx held her chin thoughtfully. "When it comes to the unique powers of the seven sins, there is always a possibility. Let's find him first and see how it goes." Felix nodded. He was already planning to retrieve Nimmo after he dealt with Lucifer, postponing even his hunt of the Darkins. Nimmo was family and family always comes first. Vin Diesel quote. "By the way, did any of you hear what the Paragon said earlier? About the purities?" Elder Kraken interjected with a serious tone. "How could we miss it?" Lord Loki remarked with an intrigued look. "Looks like primogenitor's purities are well sought after, especially those with higher levels of purities like Lady Yggdrasil. It was nothing new that demons devour purities to maintain their sanity and also increase their strength. However, it never really hit them that primogenitors could also have their purities devoured and turned into demonized versions of their old selves. It was understandable, as the only demon who was somewhat capable of standing before the primogenitors was Lucifer. Even he got his ass beat by the Darkins and more than 100 times at the hand of Fenrir without a chance of defeating him. But now? Felix was the owner of evil energy and he possessed what it took to demonize any primogenitor he desired. If I devoured Wendigo and Saurus purities and demonized them, doesn't that mean I can turn them into my slaves? Felix showed a devious smile. Darkins as slaves? Love to see it. Thor was the first to dig the idea, grinning as wickedly as Felix. For what they had done, death is a mere release. Fenrir said coldly, approving the suggestion. It was far more humiliating and cruel to turn the Darkins into demonized slaves than just killing them. Felix was certain that they wouldn't be able to betray him since not a single demon could be disloyal to the personification of evil energy. Even the proud black and green dragon heads knelt before Lucifer after demonization. Let them enjoy their freedom for now. Felix hadn't made a decision yet and didn't want to waste his time on them at the moment. Nimmo was clearly up to something big and he wasn't comfortable not knowing about it. So, for the next couple of days, Felix focused only on two things: learning how to harness evil energy as good as Lucifer's and searching for Nimmo's tracks. With Lord Loki's help and the all-seeing eyes of Lord Kaos, Felix managed to finally discover somewhat of a lead. It was through a Void Nation's citizen who got caught exiting from a dimensional portal near a semi-populated planet, which was in the process of getting invaded by void creatures. He seems to be focusing on gathering the void creatures rather than saving the planet. Felix commentated with a deep frown as he watched the Jinn, opening void portals in front of the void creatures and baiting them inside by using the planet's citizens. He threw a bunch inside and the void creatures followed them mindlessly, and then he closed the portal and repeated the cycle over and over again. Felix wasn't too pleased, but he wasn't surprised. He already knew that the void citizens couldn't care less about innocent lives or such. The only reason they respected his rules was because of their respect for his strength and Nimmo's authority. But after his death? There was no point in still adhering to his laws. I don't like what I am seeing, but why isn't my body reacting? Suddenly, Felix knitted his eyebrows in discomfort after noticing the sight of those innocent people getting murdered hadn't touched a nerve. It was like he was watching the void citizen executing objects instead of lives. Is this an inescapable effect of merging with the evil energy? I don't get corrupted, but my heart became unreceptive to goodness. Felix didn't know how to feel about this development. He was completely normal, and if he wanted, he could appear next to the Void Citizen and save those people. However, the drive that made him want to do this instinctively wasn't there. It was like a psychopath doing a good deed, his body didn't tell him to do it and he wouldn't feel an ounce of fulfillment if he did it. Stop whining about every small thing. Felix chided himself, mercy and goodness is the ultimate weakness a person can have in my shoes. You should feel glad that you no longer possess such a weakness and people's suffering won't put a dent in your mental health. From now on, you will be dealing with merciless monsters who have no problem with creating races and ending them for the sake of entertainment. Felix said coldly as he kept watching those poor innocent people getting executed, get your sh*t together or you will never observe a SNES face ever again. When his masters and the tenants heard his thoughts, each had their own personal reaction and opinion. Sigh, this day has finally come. Thor smiled bitterly. I always wanted him to be more cold-blooded, but it somewhat feels wrong. Hormungandr shook his head, having no concept how he felt about this. At last, this dumbass can't be manipulated anymore through strangers. Lord Shiva smiled in approval. Yet, all of them kept it to themselves, understanding that the path ahead would only get more brutal and tougher, and Felix losing his good heart was the best way to keep his sanity intact. After all, how could he handle with the three rulers when they could intimidate to wipe his entire race with a snap of a finger? Whether they could do it or not didn't matter. Felix's reception to the threat was everything, and if he wasn't absolutely cold-blooded, he would always be one step below them no matter how strong he had gotten. 1536 To save or not to save. Let's see what Nimmo is up to. Not planning to wait until the Jinn packed up and left, Felix requested Lord Kaus to help him reach there. He believed with his assistance, he could be there in less than a second. Lord Kaus didn't reject his request. When it came to matters related to the Paragon of Sins, he would always give a hand. So, he manifested a void rift before Felix and another one on the other side near the invaded planet, using an advanced ability called void tunneling. The moment Felix stepped inside the void rift, he found himself in front of the exit of the other one like he had teleported through the entire distance. It was no small distance as he was in a different galaxy. This is more or less similar to a wormhole. Felix admired, no wonder nothing escapes Lord Kaus' eyes and grasp. Felix knew that this ability must be on a different level in terms of difficulty as he had never seen a Void Citizen use one before, even Nimmo hadn't unlocked it before. Meanwhile, high above a ruined city, a lone Void Citizen floated in the air, his dark, featureless silhouette a stark contrast to the starry void that surrounded him. He wore a sleek, black suit that seemed to absorb the very essence of light, and his eyes shone with an eerie, otherworldly glow. Beneath him, the planet's surface was in turmoil. Void creatures, grotesque and nightmarish in appearance, swarmed across the land, their malevolent intent clear. They left destruction in their wake, and the planet's inhabitants were in dire peril. When will this endless labor finish? He sighed with a look of exhaustion as he opened a void rift behind him. Then, he went down to pick up some of the terrorized citizens, unbothered by their cries and screams. Just as he was about to hurl them inside the void rift after noticing that many void creatures were chasing them, a sudden authoritative pressure befell him. Hey! He was frozen instantly in place and the citizens under his control fell towards the wide-open jaw of the void creatures while screaming in despair. Whoosh! Whoosh! Before they could get devoured, time seemed to have come to a halt in the entire city, causing the entire world to turn as quiet as a forest at midnight. This entire sight freaked the sh*t out of the Void Citizen, but he couldn't even move an inch to react. I think I remember you, Ethan. Suddenly, a very familiar powerful voice came from behind the Void Citizen. A voice that the entire universe would recognize in a heartbeat. A voice that had once ruled the Void Nation and the entire alliance with his strength alone. Impossible. Stupefied, Ethan wanted to turn badly and check with his own eyes, but he couldn't move an inch. Mind coming for a walk with me? Felix asked as he placed his hand on top of Ethan's shoulder. Without needing his response, he teleported both of them outside of the planet. Just as Felix planned on leaving with him, he suddenly came to a halt and looked back at the invaded planet. I might not feel like it, I might not feel fulfilled at helping, but I must still choose to help whenever I have the choice. If can't even do that, am I still a human? Without an ounce of hesitation, Felix turned around and faced the planet, then, he started increasing his size at a rapid pace. What the f***ck? In less than a few seconds, Ethan's eyes almost popped out of their sockets in shock at the sight of Felix reaching half the size of the planet. Although the planet was even smaller than Earth, he was still at a colossal size that made him seem godly. Felix was nowhere done, he extended both of his arms at the sides of the planet and began releasing crimson mist from his massive pores. The mist coalesced into a swirling, ethereal cloud that rapidly expanded, covering the entire planet's surface like a shroud. It was a breathtaking and terrifying sight, like the apocalypse had arrived. The citizens tried to escape from the raging crimson mist, feeling utter despair and terror at this new threat. But soon enough, all of them stopped running and watched with widened shocked eyes as the crimson mist enveloped the marked void creatures in its luminous embrace. The creatures writhed and struggled for less than a moment before they got erased from existence, leaving no trace behind. Millions of void creatures were gone just like that. It's really him, my king. Ethan muttered with an odd look as he stared at the godly Felix, more certain than ever that the man before him was their late void king. Felix lowered his arms and cancelled his destruction mist, then, he reduced his size back to normal and turned his back on the planet, not feeling an ounce of joy or emotion from saving an entire civilization. This is how primogenitors feel on a daily basis. Thor said calmly, "You will get used to it." Primogenitors had lived for so long that the life or death of mortals wouldn't move a string in their hearts unless the mortal mattered to them. So, when they were roaming the universe and devouring planets for energy to sustain their massive sizes, they couldn't care less if those planets were populated or not. With time, life loses its value, and Felix was slowly treading on this path whether he liked it or not. "Let's go." Felix lifted Ethan by his collar and disappeared through the cosmos, having no idea that the citizens on the world were kowtowing for their savior, whoever it was. Inside Felix's Eternal Nautilus spaceship, Ethan could be seen kneeling before Felix with an excited expression inside the cockpit. "My king! I can't believe you are back. This is the greatest." "Enough!" Felix interrupted and said, "I want to know what's Nemo doing and why has my country disappeared from the face of the universe?" Of course, of course." Ethan lifted his head and began narrating with a bothered voice. "Ever since your death was announced, the Void Nation has been on a steady decline. However, we were all fine with it, knowing that we can always rise back up after things steadied. But then, something seemed to have snapped inside our god's head." Ethan reported with a worried tone, "We have no hint what happened to him, but he has ordered everyone to start bringing empty creatures to him. Since we can't reject his orders, we have been working tirelessly by either creating empty creatures through the Wrath creators or collecting them like I was doing. This has been going on for decades now." "How many void creatures are in his ownership now?" Felix asked with a deep frown. "Candace and the councilmen know the exact number. All I know is an estimated number." "What's that?" Ethan thought about it for a moment before reporting, "I believe we are close to reaching 50 billion empty creatures." Forget Felix, even the tenants were left in utter disbelief at such a staggering cataclysmic number. 1537 The statue. What is he planning to do with such a massive army? Raid the universe? Felix didn't know what to think. Just a couple million void creatures were enough to devour a planet. 100 million could literally own one of the top 30 races in the Alliance. 50 billion? Felix doubted the Alliance could handle such an army if it was released at once across the entire universe. "No one really knows our god's thoughts besides Candace," Ethan soon added, "though, I have witnessed the gathering of those void creatures and it didn't seem like they were prepared for a war." "What do you mean?" Felix asked. "This might be weird to say, but our God has created a massive statue of you from them. A statue. Everyone believes that this is his way of honoring your death after finally accepting it, Ethan said with a wry smile. I see. Felix remained silent, deep in his thoughts about this peculiar situation. He didn't think that Nimmo would go as far as to create an honorary statue for him, it didn't sound like him at all. Do you think? Lady Sphinx suddenly interjected. Knowing him, it's more plausible than this, Felix replied, knowing that they reached the same theory. There is only one way to find out. Felix looked at Ethan and ordered him. Lead the way to the dimensional portal, I will take it from there. Right away. Ethan didn't dare disobey. Some time later, Felix and Ethan went through a hidden dimensional rift. The moment Felix reopened his eyes, he was surprised to see a supermassive dimensional pocket with a surface area covering more than his eyes could see. The landscape stretched endlessly while a red sky cast an eerie glow over the surroundings. Void creatures of various shapes and sizes drifted through the crimson heavens, their forms twisting and undulating in bizarre patterns. But what truly caught his attention was a colossal statue looming in the distance. It's really a statue of me. Seeing with his own eyes was vastly different than hearing about it. He didn't know how to react to this living statue, which resembled him in every detail. The void statue emanated an imposing presence, capturing his essence as if he were a deity among the void citizens. Lead the way, Felix ordered. Understanding that he wanted to meet the councilman and Nimmo, Ethan took Felix to the Void Palace, which was situated near the statue. Who's that with Ethan? His aura is too overwhelming. Doesn't he resemble our previous Void King a bit? I do see the resemblance, but it can't be. The Void citizens muttered among each other as they stared at Ethan and Felix's silhouette. Still, just from the silhouette alone, they were able to spot the resemblance. When they noticed that their destination was the palace, they looked at each other for a couple of moments before racing behind them. They knew that Ethan's citizen rank was far from directly speaking with the councilman. For him to ignore their strict rules and head toward the palace, only meant that it wasn't up to him. Ignoring the crowd of void citizens behind them, Ethan and Felix landed in front of the palace's door. The palace stood as a dark and imposing structure with an architecture that was both grand and mysterious. It had obsidian walls that seemed to absorb the crimson light of the void sky. Towers and spires jutted into the red heavens, their forms twisted and jagged, giving the palace a fascinating appearance. Boredom. Before Ethan could announce his reason for entry, the palace's gate was blown wide open, and a massive pitch-black raccoon with red eyes lunged at them. Thud. Thud. Ethan was thrown to the side akin to a ragdoll while Felix received the full brunt of the raccoon, allowing him to tackle him on the ground. I missed you too, buddy. Felix chuckled while letting Nimmo rub his massive head on his chest in pure euphoric excitement. He wasn't startled in the slightest by Nimmo's tackle as he had already sensed him before he got close to the door, the same with Nimmo as he felt Felix's existence the instant he entered his dimensional pocket. Felix. High above, near one of the many windows, Candace could be seen staring at this scene with a shocked look. She was just handling some matters related to the creation of new Wrath creators with Nimmo before he suddenly rushed away with a thrilled look. I can't believe this, did he get revived or he was never dead in the first place? King Arthur remarked, his voice quite shaken as he watched from another window with many other councilmen. Ha 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 ha. As expected of our Void King. Not even death can keep him down. The ruiner roared in laughter as he jumped from the window, breaking it into pieces and landing right next to Felix and Nimmo. Aaron, Miriam, Mammon, Candace, and even Arthur swiftly followed after him, ending up surrounding Felix from all sides. When the Void citizens saw this, they went instantly abuzz with excitement and glee, knowing that no one could erect such a reaction from their god besides their king. It's really him, our king. The king is alive, the king is back. The king has returned. Felix rarely felt overwhelmed, but at this moment, he didn't know what to do next. Nimmo was rubbing against him, seemingly trying to hug him while Candace and his subordinates were watching him with all sorts of emotions. My apologies for taking a while to return. In the end, he chuckled jokingly while pushing the fetus Nimmo away. Eee! Eee! Nimmo instantly transformed into his minimized raccoon version and landed on Felix's shoulder, covering his neck with his tail and continuing to rub his face against Felix. I know, I missed you too, and a lot. Felix patted him on the head with a faint smile, feeling somewhat blessed that Nimmo hadn't changed at all. After hearing about the weird things he was up to, he was really freaking out that Nimmo had lost it and turned into a similar version of his alter ego. It turned out, he was worried over nothing. My king, we are the ones who should apologize for failing you. We weren't there to defend you and we deserve punishment for it. Arthur bowed his head deeply. Although Felix's apology was a joke, Arthur and the rest of the councilmen didn't take it as such. I might have failed to protect you, but just tell me the name of who did it. The ruiner uttered coldly while cracking his knuckles. I will make sure he will never see the light of the day again. Relax guys, it's not that deep. Plus. Felix smiled, the one who did it isn't in your league. If it was someone else who uttered it, the ruiner would have lost his sh*t as his pride could never accept such an insult. However, when it came directly from Felix whom he knew was much more powerful than him, he understood that their enemy wasn't a nobody. Meanwhile, Candace remained quiet throughout the conversation. She already knew about the Eternal Kingdom and Felix's revival plan since she was part of Lady Sphinx's consciousness before. But, she kept everything to herself, knowing that it would do more harm than good to give Nimmo and the others a false hope of Felix's return. Before we continue with anything, can someone tell me what's the purpose of that? Felix inquired with a serious tone as he pointed his finger above him at the statue. Nimmo instantly flinched and remained silent, staring at the other side like he had nothing to do with this. That, well, I guess it's quite useless now. Candace smiled wryly. What do you mean? Felix narrowed his eyes, his previous theory sounding more and more plausible. In the end, Arthur was the one who verified it. Little God has decided to take it upon himself and resurrect you through a wish. He revealed with a deep sigh of relief, we were preparing a offering cost for it. We have attained 65 billion void creatures now and I doubt we are even 20% near to fulfilling the payment. 1538 earning belly rubs. As I expected. Felix smiled softly while rubbing Nimmo's head, letting him understand that he was appreciating the thought instead of getting mad. Eee. Eee. Nimmo happily accepted his appreciative rubs. You knew about it? Candace inquired. I guessed after hearing about the statue from Ethan. Felix replied and then added a question, though, how do you know exactly how much you need for the sacrificial price? How can this many void creatures not be enough to cover 20%? I think it's best we take this inside the palace. Arthur said as he eyed the noisy crowd in front of them. Sure, Aaron, tell them that I will be making an announcement later at night and they should keep the news of my return a secret, Felix ordered. Felix didn't need to use Nimmo to make sure everyone obeyed his orders, knowing that if someone dared blow the lid off his secret, he would easily get caught. After all, their consciousness wisps were inside Nimmo's mind, making it impossible for any of them to escape from his wrath if they betrayed any order. As you command. Aaron nodded and took off towards the crowd while Felix and the rest entered the palace. The palace's interior resembled that of the Great Hall inside Nimmo's consciousness greatly, with the dark and ominous design. Felix went straight to the empty throne and sat down while Nimmo remained seated on top of his shoulder. Candace stood at Felix's right arm while the rest of the councilmen remained in front. Now, I know that many of you are curious about my stay in the spirit realm, but you should drop any question you have as I am forbidden from answering them. Felix got this out of the way before they could discuss anything. Is that so? Damn. Not even a little snippet. As he expected, the light of curiosity in their eyes died off immediately and their hearts were washed with a sense of disappointment. Everyone was curious about the afterlife, especially them, who were considered immortals. It won't end well if I open my mouth, so drop the subject and tell me more about this wish and the sacrifice, Felix said. Well, at the beginning, Nimmo wanted to fulfill the wish forcefully without any equal payment. This would have turned badly for him as the universe would serve him a severe punishment for his abuse of the law of greed. Candace narrated, but, I ended up stopping him and convincing him that we can use other creatures as trade of life for yours. Is that right? Felix gave Nimmo a hardened stare, causing him to nod his head a little. I want you to never have such thought again. Felix chided him, if I die, I die, don't try to sacrifice your life for mine. Am I understood? Ee. Nimmo whimpered softly, clearly upset about getting told off. While it pained Felix to scold him, especially when he had only his interest in mind, he knew that he had to be stern. The last thing he wanted was for Nimmo to sacrifice himself for his well-being. He couldn't handle knowing that both of his closest loved ones ended up slumbering for eternity because of him. It would be a far crueler fate than death. But, don't worry, I will soon be strong enough that you won't need to have such thoughts in your mind again. Felix comforted with a cold tone, you have my word. This made Nimmo happy again, he only cared about Felix's well-being and being alive with him, nothing more, nothing less. Please continue. At first Nimmo planned to sacrifice all creatures, whether intelligent or not, but I convinced him that if you heard about this, you wouldn't be pleased with him. Candace chuckled at Nimmo's annoyed look, not too pleased with her snitching at his father. Good work. Felix praised her while giving Nimmo a side glance. He knew that it wasn't for Candace's relationship with Nimmo being so close, he wouldn't bother listening to her at all and do as he pleased. Even if it meant massacring the entire universe for the sake of reviving Felix, he would go for it. In the end, we have decided to use the void creatures as a sacrifice. Miriam continued from here with her seductive melodious voice. They are easy to make with our wrathful creator's armies and there are plenty of them across the universe. Unfortunately, because their life's value is so poor compared to yours in the eyes of the universe, the price was way too steep. Arthur shook his head, we even had to invest more than 20 billion void creatures at the start to create this untrackable dimensional pocket and keep our operations under wraps. I am more surprised that it's even possible to use void creatures as a price. Felix remarked, isn't this highly abusable by the paragon of sins, Nimmo, and the Jinn? Felix felt that it was weird that the universe accepted the void creatures as a reasonable payment when the paragons themselves were capable of creating an infinite number of void creatures. It was like a bank printing money and using said money to buy whatever it wanted without any repercussions. The government clearly wouldn't allow this, and so should the universe in this scenario. Well, we also had such thoughts back in the day and we came to the simple conclusion that the universe has already punished the paragon when it created our race. Even if she was punished for it, our race was still considered as an actual race within the ecosystem and so, we have lives and worth in the eyes of the universe. Mammon shared with a calm tone. As the greatest Jinn alive, he was more knowledgeable about this subject than any other void citizen. That makes sense. Felix nodded in understanding before adding, the universe is operating on a set of frigid rules in white and black. It doesn't do well with matters in grey, so many loopholes emerge where its rules can be overlooked or even abused. This was the perfect example of why the universe required an active consciousness to reason on such matters and deliver appropriate punishments. Unfortunately, there was no such thing, and the cunning and powerful like the Unigins and the three rulers had the option to abuse the rules. If it's like this, I think I found the best way to acquire Sin's immunities. Lady Sphinx remarked. You aren't thinking of using those void creatures to wish for the immunities? Thor raised an eyebrow in surprise. When Felix heard them, his eyes slightly lit up. He knew that the greed laws had no limitation on what wish one could ask as long as the appropriate price was paid. If so, why not wish for him to have sin immunities and utilize those void creatures as the payment? It was the perfect method. Mind I ask, there are more than 60 billion void creatures collected, do you think they are enough to wish for at least a couple of sin's immunities? Felix wondered out loud, catching the councilman and Candace by surprise. Sin's immunities. Mammon thought about it for a moment and answered without asking Felix about his motives, I think it's enough for 2 immunities, maybe even 3. So many? Felix exclaimed. Even though he uttered that he could obtain a couple of them, he didn't believe it. In his eyes, he would be over the moon if those void creatures could be traded for a single immunity. It's not really. Mammon clarified, immunities are pretty widespread and there are plenty of ways to acquire them, even for commoners. So, in the eyes of the universe, the price for wishing for them is nowhere close to reviving someone even if those were 7 sins immunities we are talking about. In other words, worth was decided based on the challenge of achieving something and its accessibility in the universe. Sins immunities were difficult to obtain, but they were possessed by thousands of void citizens, which underplayed their values. If it wasn't for the challenge of getting them high, the 60 billion void creatures would be enough for 7 sins and still, there would be leftovers. You handed me the biggest present possible at the best moment. Felix rubbed Nemo's belly with a gleeful smile, making Nemo giggle in enjoyment. He had no clue that the past decades of slaving the void citizens had saved Felix a lot of time and trouble. All he cared about was getting them belly rubs and this time, he earned them. 1539 bringing them on the plan. Mind I ask why you want to have immunities to sins? Candace tilted her head in confusion. Felix thought about it for a moment whether to bring them into the plan or not. While they were his subordinates, they were mostly loyal to Nemo and if he told them that he was planning to become the new paragon of sins, he didn't know how they would take it. I will be needing their assistance and I can't have them working wholeheartedly without knowing the truth. In the end, he decided to fill them in. At this moment, there is no need to know my ultimate goal, but I can tell you this. Felix looked at them with a stern expression and disclosed, I am aiming to become the new paragon of sins after devouring Nemo's alter ego. I need those immunities to survive my battle against him. As expected, everyone was left stunned and befuddled at his bold goal. Becoming a paragon of sins? They didn't even know if that was possible in the first place, yet Felix said it with such conviction, that their brain wires tangled with each other. They had no clue if they should consider what he said as a joke or a serious matter. Only Nemo seemed quite excited and eager for Felix to achieve his goal even when he heard that he was planning to devour his alter ego. In Nemo's little world, there weren't many complications. He hated his alter ego and he loved Felix. As for his title being taken away by Felix, he didn't even know his duties or understand them yet since his awakened version was the one imprisoned. I know this is heavy to take, but I am dead serious. To make his claims more believable, Felix snapped his finger and a crimson misty ball emerged on top of his palm, releasing an ungodly amount of corrupting evil aura. Evil energy. Wait, how? Did you become a demon? How am I not sensing any corruption from you? All of them recognized it immediately and stared back at Felix with shocked expressions, having no clue how he managed to obtain it when he didn't release an ounce of corruption from him. Even though they noticed Felix's new appearance, they didn't think that he had become a demon simply because of the lack of corruption aura around him. I found a way to devour Lucifer and take away his control of evil energy. Felix clarified calmly while turning the crimson sphere into many shapes. You can consider me as the new lord of demons and anything related to evil energy. Wasn't Lucifer killed by you before? How can you devour him then? This is too much to take. Candace shook her head and sat next to him, feeling a bit fuzzy. Seeing that their bewilderment only grew stronger and stronger, Felix exhaled deeply and decided to narrate everything that happened while omitting details related to the spirit realm and Asna. This made his story seem filled with holes, but they understood that he was merely retaining information from them instead of making stuff up. In the end, the conclusion was Felix needed to become the new paragon of sins to enter the eternal kingdom. Why? He didn't tell them. Still, they were at last on the same page concerning his goal. A mortal becoming a deity is already an achievement that should have been spoken for generations to come, but now, you are aiming to turn into a literal god. You are crazy. The ruiner laughed out loud, and love it. I am in. Indeed, this does sound too ludicrous, but if there is one person capable of pulling it off, it has to be you. Arthur commentated with a solemn tone. He was the most rational and cunning of them. While this goal seemed a bit impossible to achieve, he understood that he had nothing to lose and everything to gain from supporting Felix all the way. If they failed, so be it, nothing much would change whether he died during the battle or not. But, if he succeeded, he would be one of the closest subordinates to the paragon of sins himself. There was no point in waiting for Nemo to grow and help them get stronger when Felix could do a much better job at it. Mammon, Miriam, and Candace all thought the same. Your support and devotion are highly appreciated. Felix nodded in gratitude, knowing exactly what was on their minds, and didn't care much about it. They wouldn't be void citizens if they didn't prioritize themselves before everything. Now, prepare everyone for tonight's meeting. I will be addressing the current development, Felix ordered. Now that he realized void creatures could be farmed for wishes, he wasn't planning on stopping his nation from collecting them. At least, not until he had enough to get all 7 sins immunities. Everyone is dismissed but Candace. Arthur and the rest bowed their heads deeply and left the throne chamber. After they were gone, Felix turned to Candace and told her to put her wisp inside his consciousness space. She gladly did so as she had missed Lady Sphinx and the others. When she opened her eyes and noticed the new town with many ancestors hanging around the place, she felt at ease like she had returned home. Look who's here! Thor chuckled in greeting. Bring me some juice from the bar. Lord Shiva ordered indifferently without bothering to even glance in her direction, having his head planted in his manga book. Ignore him and come sit with us. Lady Sphinx smiled at her. Lord Shiva glared at her, but he refrained from retorting, not wanting to start trouble with her. Thank you. Candace went and took a seat with Felix, Lady Sphinx, and the bunch, excluding Lord Shiva, and Loki. When she looked around and didn't notice Asna or Carbuncle, she couldn't help but ask for their whereabouts with a titled head. Everyone looked at Felix and saw that he still had a faint peaceful smile, seemingly not bothered by her question. Ever since he had returned, they avoided bringing Asna up or comforting him about her situation, knowing that it would do nothing but keep unsealing his wound. Asna is my reason for becoming the paragon of sins. She has been abducted by those beings and I have to get her back one way or another. Felix shared what he had hidden from the councilman. They took Madame. Candace covered her mouth with a stunned and saddened expression. While Asna was a B*TCH to her at the start, they quickly connected together against any other girl wanting to cling to Felix. So, Candace was genuinely affected by the news on a personal level. Not wanting to discuss this subject any further since he would be forced to share details, Felix waved his hand and said, You don't have to bother yourself with this. Asna is fine and we will rescue her even if it's the last agenda before I clock out. As for Elder Carbuncle Klee, he had fulfilled his dream at last and had gone away in peace. Felix smiled. I'm happy for him. Candace showed a forced disheartened smile, still hung up on Asna's matters, but she didn't want to dampen the mood. Candace, I am telling you this alone because I trust you the most amongst my subordinates. So, I need you to oversee the Void Creatures collection and rebuild our Void Nation's empire in the Alliance while I handle other matters. Felix uttered with a solemn tone. Leave it to me, I have it covered. Candace didn't shy away from responsibility at all. While Lord Hades didn't tell him to get stronger before his battle with Nemo's alter ego, it was obvious that he had to be in his best possible form. To do that meant that he needed to use all available methods to strengthen himself, like pushing through the dragon/devourer's marks, eating purities from powerful beings, and working harder on his battle experience. If it was up to him, he would have entered the Origin Realm and received the biggest strength enhancement known to the universe. Alas, Lord Hades forbade him from doing so, telling him that entering the Origin Realm was the final step of ascension. Without it, he would never become a real Unigen. 1540 equal trade symbol. Sometime later, Felix joined Nemo's consciousness space as a wisp and announced his return properly to all Void citizens across the universe. Not everyone was inside the dimensional pocket, so he held the meeting in Nemo's mind. While he was giving a speech to restore the Void Empire, Saurus and Wendigo were seen sitting in a cozy living room with a fireplace, resembling Managel's previous place. "We haven't heard from that lunatic yet," Saurus wondered. "What is there to report? The rumor was fake, as I told you, and he must be embarrassed for even entertaining it." Wendigo sneered. "Most likely, still, it wouldn't hurt to ask. I am bored anyway." Saurus shrugged his shoulders as he tried to reach out to Lucifer. The other side was connected fully to the UVR, which allowed them to link their wisps with Queen AI and join the network again. As for Lord Loki, they kept all their most important conversations telepathic and never mentioned their main consciousness locations out loud or hinted at them. In their eyes, even if Felix died, Lord Chaos wasn't going to forgive them for their blatant disrespect, so they had to remain hidden. He isn't picking up. Saurus raised an eyebrow. "That's a bit weird. Let me try." Wendigo's expression also got a bit bothered by this, understanding that Lucifer would never ignore a call from them. After all, he was just attempting to recruit them to hunt Felix's past shadow, and he should be eager to receive their call. After a couple of attempts by both of them and no response, they were left staring at each other. "Do you think?" "I don't know." Saurus frowned. "I am more inclined to believe that he is somewhere outside of the network's range, but my gut feeling keeps telling me that something ain't right." "Me too." Wendigo nodded. Primogenitor's intuition was extremely powerful and they trusted more than anything else. Still, it didn't mean that they were going to conclude the worst and be done with it. "We will check on him in the next weeks or months," Saurus said. "If he's still not responding, then we can assume he will never do." Wendigo went quiet for a moment while staring at the crackling fireplace, his shadowy eyes not reflecting an ounce of light in them, yet, Felix's demonic face seemed to appear in the flames dancing around. "Is he alive?" Till now, he was still unable to accept this reality as it meant so many things. First and foremost, the reignition of their hatred and revenge agenda against him for murdering their brother. "Settle down, it's far too unlikely and that prick will pick up soon." Wendigo got rid of the rising heat in his heart, having no interest in getting emotionally invested in a fantasy. Alas, if only he knew that Felix would be visiting them soon, he wouldn't be acting like this. The next morning, inside the dimensional pocket, Felix was seen standing in front of his massive living statue with Nemo sitting on his shoulder. The councilmen were standing behind him. Felix decided to start getting immunities today, so he could have plenty of time to train with them before his fateful battle. "Nemo, you can start," Felix said. Eee. Nemo's eyes glowed with an eerie green light as he harnessed the immense power of the laws of greed. The symbol of a fox appeared above Nemo's head inside a circular hexagon, which was packed with intricate and mysterious designs and writings. While Nemo didn't say it out loud, Felix could sense that he made a wish to bestow upon him immunity to lust laws. Felix picked lust first since he was still a bit traumatized from his last interaction with the Paragon. After Nemo's wish was completed, the same symbol appeared on top of the living void statue and it was as dim as the night sky. But soon, the void creatures underneath disintegrated into green mist and fed the symbol rapidly, making it resemble a black hole sucking in matter. Sheesh! Felix was slightly taken aback by the sight of millions of void creatures disappearing into the symbol's devouring presence, lighting it bit by bit. "This is called equal trade symbol," When it comes to the greed laws, there are two types of wishes. Mammon took the time to explain what Felix was seeing. The first one is geared for the user's advantage and works only on simple wishes, like giving someone an extra 1,000 years longevity, but getting his racial trait as payment. A smaller symbol manifests and the universe isn't heavily involved in the trade. But for such complex wishes without two involved parties, this symbol makes an appearance and it devours anything before it completes the final price. What happens if the provided price isn't enough? Felix inquired. It turns to the owner and starts devouring his longevity, his organs, his senses, his emotions, and in the end his life if the price was still not enough. Mammon said with a solemn tone, many jinns lost their lives because of their greed, incapable of resisting having infinite wishes, but at the same time can't afford them. Wait, can't they just terminate the process? Felix frowned. No. Not even our little god can cancel the trade when it starts since it's a business trade between him and the universe. Mammon shook his head, nothing humbles unijins but the universe itself. I see, this does sound dangerous. Felix understood that the seven sins weren't powerful for no reason. There were massive drawbacks to owning them in which, the owner himself get tested against his desires. Just because one possessed immunity to those sins, it didn't mean that he would be incapable of falling under their effect. It only meant that others couldn't use his desires against him. But he could still screw himself up. In the case of our little god and the paragon, since they can't die, the most severe punishment is slumber for a very, very long period. I thought so. Felix nodded. Suddenly, Nemo poked Felix in the cheek, telling him to prepare to accept the bestowment as the symbol was about to be fully lighted up. Felix didn't know what he would experience exactly, but he was used to receiving bestowment, so he wasn't tense at all. Abruptly, as the last empty creature vanished into the symbol, a surge of green energy beam washed over Felix from the symbol, making him glow all over for a couple of seconds. Then, the light dimmed down and the sign disappeared. It's over. Felix didn't feel any pain or discomfort, in fact, he didn't feel anything at all. What did you expect? Candace chuckled. I don't know, I am just used to the pain accompanying anything able to get me stronger. Felix's eyelids twitched, feeling like a disappointed masochist. Do you want to test your protection with me? Miriam giggled alluringly with a pinkish light in her eyes. Before Felix could respond, Candace gave her a cold glare. In your dreams. Knowing that Asna wasn't around, Candace had no purpose of letting any woman consider making a advance on Felix, plus, if someone was going to test him, she was the next in line. 1541 It's time to get new slaves. No need to be a B***tch about it, I was just suggesting. Miriam huffed with an irked tone. Humph. Candace ignored her and asked Felix for his permission to use her lust laws on him. No offense, but I doubt any of you can affect my mental defenses without even possessing an immunity. Felix shook his head, I will let Nemo do the test. With Felix's empowered soul, his mental defenses were on another level, and unless it was a unijin or a primogenitor with insane mental attacks like Kumiho and Siren, nothing could harm him. Nemo, can you, Nemo? When Felix looked at his side to thank Nemo for his troubles and request his help, he couldn't help but knit his eyebrows at his tired expression. His eyes were droopy and his body felt light, like he was about to fall asleep any moment. Are you okay? Felix got a bit concerned, knowing that it was bizarre for Nemo to feel exhausted while around him. He was always happy-skippy-go-lucky. Nemo replied with a wide smile, but his usual energetic self wasn't there. I think he is just a bit tired. Mammon uttered calmly, usually, we all get tired if we use highly demanding abilities, but this shouldn't have affected him that much. He is missing half of his soul and most of his powers to his alter ego. Arthur added with a serious tone, it would be not normal if he wasn't affected negatively. I thought so too. Felix reached the same conclusion, which made him feel somewhat guilty for this situation. He was overworking Nimmo, who wasn't even at his peak form. Eeeeeeee. When Nimmo sensed Felix's change in emotions, he forced his eyes wide open and increased his volume, trying to let Felix know that this was nothing for him and he shouldn't feel bad. "Thanks, buddy, but I think you should take a break." Felix smiled faintly while putting him in his embrace and rubbing his head gently. Eeeeeee. Nimmo couldn't maintain the tough act and fell asleep right away, enjoying Felix's comforting touch. "Candace, follow me. You guys are free." Felix excused everyone but Candace as he flew back to the palace. He planned on finishing the statue by wishing for as many immunities as possible, but now? He no longer had such a thought and wanted to do it only if Nimmo was 100% up for it. Candace, with her alluring charm and a glint of mischief in her eyes, approached Felix with graceful and hypnotic movements. Her voice took on a sultry tone as she spoke. "Let's see if it works." She extended a hand, her fingers lightly tracing a path along his chest. Her touch was like a gentle caress of the wind, but she knew her powers could be far more persuasive. "You know, I can make you feel things you've never experienced before." She leaned in closer, her lips almost brushing against his ear as she whispered sweet promises. Her voice and aura were infused with seductive energy, and a captivating allure emanated from the lust laws. Felix, however, remained unaffected, his expression calm and composed. He had weakened his mental defenses on purpose so her manipulation could take hold of him, but he didn't feel an ounce of emotion or desire rising within him. "It seems like it's working just fine," Felix commentated as he pushed Candace away gently. "We are done here. I am glad to be of help." With a playful wink, Candace stepped back, acknowledging his boundaries. "Based on the quantity devoured of void creatures, I believe the statue can help out with just another immunity and a bit of leftover will remain." Felix asked her, "In your opinion, which immunity do I need to give priority to next?" "I guess greed," Candace replied. "Greed?" Felix was slightly taken aback. He expected her to say pride since Nimmo's alter ego Pride was over the moon, and if he challenged Felix to a battle of pride, he would most likely dominate him. After all, while Felix had pride in himself, it couldn't amount to a Unigen's pride knowingly born as one of the gods in the universe. Candace clarified with a solemn tone, "All Sin's abilities are extremely dangerous in battles. But greed is on another level, since just like you used to wish to get immunities, Nimmo's alter ego can wish to remove them from you. Even worse, he can wish for your death if all hope seemed lost in his victory, and will gladly serve the punishment of his abuse." "You're right, that does sound impossible to beat," Felix confirmed with a deep tone. Felix understood that if got immune to greed laws, he would be immune to anyone using greed laws' effects on him, but if he was the one initiating it, it would work just fine. "Though, I have to leave at last. I can't accept wishes from Nimmo if I get the immunity second." "That's true. By the way, will it be cheaper to extract immunities from Wrath Creators, the Dreamers, and the World Eaters than to wish for them straight off the universe?" Felix proposed. Felix realized that it would take him centuries if not more if he used only voidlings to get all the immunities. After all, the void creatures' numbers in the universe would get fewer and fewer with their constant hunting. Also, the wrathful creators had a limit to the number they could bear each day. If there was any different method to reduce the period, he would take it right away. "Massively," Candace replied, "if you provided the item, object, or whatnot, the price gets reduced drastically, since it would be regarded as a direct trade between two subjects instead of a trade between a subject and the universe. The only downside is those creatures losing their immunities, which in a sense, kills them. That's why I have chosen only those three." Felix replied calmly, "They are unintelligent and it wouldn't be too much of a loss." While Felix was cold-hearted, he wasn't senseless enough to pick some intelligent void citizens and steal their immunities, knowing that it would ruin his image in his nation forever. After finishing his discussion with Candace, he sent her away and switched to his wisp in his consciousness space. After he noticed that the majority of tenants were in the central plaza, he went to the table and sat down. Without needing to say anything, most of the tenants joined him after reading what he had in mind. I think it's about time I get some new slaves, Felix grinned coldly. Haha, make sure to put their wisps with us, I have plenty of fun prepared for them. Thor laughed as he gulped alcohol from a big jar. Now that Nemo's situation was settled and Lucifer was handled, it was time for the remaining Darkins to receive their share of Felix's wrath. Felix had never forgotten what those three had put him through and what they did to his planet and dearest family. He only overcame his hatred and anger to deal with other important matters, and now, it was time to release it on them. 1542 Seeking their location. First, how do we find them? Felix inquired while glancing at Lord Loki from a distance, who was annoying Lord Shiva, not letting him read in peace. Don't look at me, they are signed into the network with their wisps and they had never mentioned anything about their main consciousness location. Lord Loki shrugged his shoulders without bothering to look at them. It's expected, they are too cunning and careful to make such a rookie mistake, Hormungandr said. Lord Koas can't help us out on the other side because of the Paragon, I am also slightly bit hesitant to return there. Felix felt a shiver course his spine after imagining his fate if the Paragon caught him. It's doubtful if she would make a move on you. Lady Sphinx said, if she wanted you dead, you would have been already. I am not scared of death. Felix sighed. Even with lust immunity, Felix didn't feel safe in the slightest around the Paragon as he knew that she could play with him in a million different ways. Still, he had no intentions of backing down from hunting the Darkins. If a primogenitor doesn't want to be found, he wouldn't be found. So, this is going to be much more difficult than you think. Fenrir said expressionlessly, they aren't retarded to get baited into showing themselves like Lucifer. Felix knew that he was right, the other side was a massive territory and it would take him forever to check planet by planet, moon by moon. I have no interest in waiting for them to show themselves on their own. Felix narrowed his eyes as he eyed Candace. How much do you think it will cost to get their location through a wish? A lot. Candace shook her head, I have no idea about the exact price, but I know that getting someone's location through a wish depends on the social status of the target. You are asking for the primogenitor's location, which is deemed of the highest value lower than only Unigens. So, it will be pricey. I see. Felix decided to put this suggestion on the side for now, knowing that Nemo was already struggling to help him with getting immunities, and he didn't want to keep piling up on him with wishes. Plus, the collected void creatures were restricted and he had to use them efficiently. Felix didn't bother asking if Mammon or other jinns were capable of helping him out, he was already told that the wish's price increases higher based on the weakness of the user. If Mammon wished for those immunities for Felix, the price could even double since his greed laws weren't as good as Nemo's. So, Felix had to rely on Nemo for complex wishes. How do we lure them out of their hiding? Felix murmured while holding his chin, running multiple scenarios in his mind to find out the best method. You can impersonate yourself as Lucifer and set up a meeting with them. Lord Loki shared casually, they have hanging out with each other lately. Everyone turned to look at him with surprised expressions. How long did you know about this? When did you plan to tell us? Lady Sphinx asked with a stern voice. Cough, for a while now. Lord Loki scratched his cheek sheepishly after realizing that he was keeping some key information to himself. We always told you to tell us anything new related to them and you didn't bother to share such intel. Thor got irritated, how lazy can you get? I am overseeing the entire UVR, you might see me like this, but I am a busy person. Although he said this with such conviction, no one believed him when he was wasting his time teasing Lord Shiva. They knew that he just didn't care as much and was just here to have some fun. Forget it, just give us the details. Hormungandr requested. Lord Loki narrated what he was allowed to hear during the short meetings between Lucifer and the Darkins, which made everyone conclude that those three had a short-term alliance to take down Felix before his death. When they heard that Lucifer had approached them when Felix first released the rumor, all of them reached the same idea. "We can lure them out or at least give us their location if we played our cards right," Thor said. "With Queen AI an illusion, we can make a lie become a truth," Felix smirked. His mind is already in the process of creating the blueprint of their strategy. The next morning. VRR. Saurus and Wendigo's AP bracelets went off at the same time while they were having a nice breakfast with tea and dessert. When they peeked at the ID, both of them looked at each other for a moment before Wendigo nodded at his partner. "About damn time you come back online." Saurus picked up the call with a grunt. On the other side of the call, Felix, no, Lucifer appeared in his blood and flesh. Felix's impersonate was so perfect, there wasn't an ounce of difference between him and the real thing. Wendigo and Saurus didn't seem suspicious of anything since Felix had called with Lucifer's real ID. With Queen AI's help, it wasn't hard to pull it off. "I am not in the mood for jokes. Listen. The rumors were **ing true. I've been ambushed by that bastard, and he's taken me into a dimensional pocket." Felix's words were laced with agitation and tension, plus a little of Lucifer's known madness. "Are you messing with us?" Wendigo and Saurus fixed their postures immediately after hearing of Felix's return, sounding solemn and frigid. "Watch what happened for yourselves, I know you won't believe me no matter what I say." Felix forwarded a recording from Lucifer's perspective when he took him inside the dimensional pocket. He got the recording from Queen AI database and usually this would be impossible, but with Lord Loki's supreme authority, everything was accessible. "It's him. **CK me, don't tell me he got revived." Saurus and Wendigo lost their cool the moment they saw Felix in the recording. Since it was a real recording, they knew that was Felix and nothing could tell them otherwise. They had been interacting with Felix so many times, they would never fail to recognize him. "I don't know if he got revived or he never died in the first place and was training in isolation, whatever happened, he returned much stronger," Felix uttered with an agitated tone. "Just watch and you will understand." Naturally, Felix had modified the recording to not show what went down there, not wanting to scare them into hiding forever. He relied on his illusion domain to mix in lies with truths, showing them somewhat of a decent battle between parties before it turned into a one-sided beatdown of Lucifer. Wendigo and Saurus were left with knitted eyebrows, watching in silence how Felix used his Cosmos Breaker to split the dimensional pocket into two, before teleporting next to Lucifer and using time spells to lock him down in place. Just as he cast Totality Collapse and was about to devour Lucifer, it was shown that the recording ended. "I was forced to relocate my consciousness to another part of evil energy to escape." Lucifer wiped his sweaty forehead, 1 second later and I would have been erased. 1543 Seeking their location. 2. He has indeed improved immensely and gotten dangerously fearsome. Saurus nodded with a stern expression, realizing that his confidence in taking down Felix was starting to wane. From having utter confidence to smash Felix into a paste with a look to fearing for his life, Saurus didn't enjoy this turn of events in the slightest. "What took you so long to contact us?" Wendigo frowned. The battle in the video didn't seem to last for even a couple of minutes. "What are you talking about? I have just gotten out of the dimensional pocket and reached out to you first." Felix shared with a bewildered look while glancing at his bracelet. Before they could reply, his eyes widened a little bit before exclaiming, "It's been already a couple of days. The dimensional pocket must be operating on a different time zone." "Must be, it also explains you not being connected to the network." Saurus nodded in approval. It wasn't bizarre for a dimensional pocket to have a different time speed than the universe. It was a common occurrence if the difference was small, like minutes or hours even. While days difference was a bit rarer, it was nothing to raise alarms about. "Forget about that, tell me now, do you still want to sit this one out? I am going after him with your help or without, even if my chances are slim to take him down." Felix smoothly returned to the main subject. While the data given to him by Lord Loki wasn't a lot, it was still enough to lead the conversation to his desired goal. It's best not to continue talking here. Wendigo said coldly while eyeing the ceiling, meet us at our usual spot. Before Felix could respond, the call was cut off. Wendigo and Saurus looked at each other and continued this discussion telepathically. What do you think? I don't know, I always had a small feeling that cockroach won't disappear like that. With Lord Loki in his pocket, he can fake his death and get away from the contracts easily, allowing him a chance to train in peace away from everyone. Saurus replied. He also had a favor from Lord Osiris, so he could have told him to confirm his death to anyone asking. I think so too. Wendigo nodded. While it's hard to believe that Lord Osiris lied to us, I am more inclined to believe in this than him being allowed to revive with his memories intact. That's just pure bullsh*t, and Lord Hades would never allow it. Any intelligent primogenitor with their kind of information would believe the same, unless Felix came forward and confirmed it with legit evidence. No one would believe his revival story. Still, they weren't easily convinced about the whole situation no matter how much evidence was shown to them. In their eyes, the only way to confirm everything 100% was by meeting with Lucifer in the real world with their consciousness wisps. On the other side, Felix grouped up with the tenants in his consciousness space. Well, that went all right I guess, Thor remarked. I think they bought it 90%. Hormungandr said, still, they are cunning and they set up the meeting to check on your evil energy and soul uniqueness. Everything can lie but the soul. Lady Sphinx nodded, with Wendigo being one of the best mentalists in the universe, he is extremely sensitive to souls and will recognize yours at first glance. Felix knew that this was a much bigger issue than the place of the meeting. Since their wisps were connected to the UVR, Lord Loki must have seen their usual meeting place many times before. But when it came to the soul, it was extremely difficult to fake Lucifer's soul uniqueness. Can't you use illusion domain to pull it off? Candace wondered. I would have, but I will need a copy of Lucifer's soul and time to work it out. Felix said with a solemn tone, I have neither at the moment. Felix knew that being late to the meeting by even an hour was more suspicious than anything else since they knew that Lucifer could move across the entire universe freely with his strategically placed evil energies. So, the moment Felix received the location from Lord Loki, he already made his move through Lord Cow's tunneling ability, putting him closer to the place. While he was continuing the rest of the journey on his own, his mind was working overtime to find the best method to convince the Darkins of Lucifer's identity. Alas, no matter how much he tried, it just seemed impossible unless Wendigo failed to notice the soul differences. If Felix utilized his spiritual pressure to hide his eyes from prying on his soul, it would give him away too since his spiritual pressure was much more powerful than theirs. The only reason he wasn't worried about it was because he could hide it with his illusion domain. Unfortunately, Felix didn't have much time to think things through, and in a couple of minutes, he arrived at the location with his disguise on. It was Aamei House sitting alone in a desolate grey moon landscape, surrounded by nothing but barren rocks and lifeless grey soil. Its warm, inviting exterior contrasts sharply with the stark, colorless environment, providing a flicker of hope and comfort in an otherwise desolate setting. The house features a cozy porch with 2 rocking chairs, and soft, warm lights emanating from its windows. Felix sensed Wendigo and Saurus' existence inside the house and he made sure to keep all of his emotions buried deep within, not wanting to give himself out voluntarily. My only way out is to pray that my distinctive evil energy puts any suspicion away. Felix thought as he walked to the door. Knowing Lucifer's disrespectful attitude, Felix didn't knock and went straight in with a cold expression, and his corruption aura slightly released. Now, answer me, are you in with me or not? Without giving them a chance to question his identity, he kicked off the meeting right away from where they left off. We are clearly in as there is no way we will let our brothers kill roam free. Saurus replied coldly. When he sensed Lucifer's evil energy, his suspicion died off instantly, knowing that no one could fake its potentness. Not even other demons possessed Lucifer's type of corruption, which set him apart from everyone just like a soul's uniqueness. Based on what was shown in the recording, it's going to be insanely difficult to kill him. We have to use whatever approach possible to weaken him. Wendigo joined in. When Felix saw this, the wisp inside his mind got slightly elated, realizing that Wendigo must have been bought by his evil energy too and didn't bother to check his soul. With his spiritual sensitivity, he would have noticed Wendigo if he tried to probe his soul. I am down with anything. Felix smiled wickedly. I don't care if I had to kickstart another demonic invasion on the Alliance to assist us. We don't need to go that far. Saurus uttered, he still has plenty of friends and close ones. If you manage to kidnap them and lure him to the other side through them, we can ambush him where he least expected. I just need a clear shot and my ultimate will be enough to take him down. Wendigo smiled with a cold look. In their eyes, it didn't matter if Felix had all of those supreme abilities and powers. As long as he let down his guard and got hit with Wendigo's dominating supreme mental attack, his life would be over. All they needed was one chance, one attack. As long as you keep his body intact, I am down for it, Felix remarked with a look of pure desire. Don't worry, no harm will befall it. Saurus and Wendigo weren't weirded out by this as Lucifer had always shown a sickening interest in Felix's body. So, where do I bring the hostages? Felix asked the million-dollar question. Dankrer, we will be waiting there for you. Saurus shared. Don't *ck this up, the kid is extremely intelligent and he must know that you will be targeting his weak friends. Wendigo warned, so, make sure to not get baited and caught again. Enough, that was a one-time occurrence. Felix showed an irritated look before standing up. I will be bringing them in the next days, don't keep me waiting. With that, Felix left from the door and his presence disappeared almost instantly from the moon. The moment he was gone for real, Wendigo turned to Saurus and uttered with a solemn tone. That ain't no Lucifer. 1544 forced to improvise. I think so too. Saurus switched up his attitude real quick. Lucifer always breaks into corruption mist after our meetings are concluded, teleporting somewhere else right away. The fact Felix used the door would have been expected for others, but not for those two. Such a small detail was enough to destroy everything Felix had built up with Lucifer's disguise. It's that brat, I have used my soul inspection before the door closed and his soul is too similar to him. Wendigo shared coldly. I guessed so, what a wicked devil. He went this far for the sake of finding our main consciousness location. It's clear, he is more than confident in taking us down. Saurus commentated with a solemn tone, not liking where this was going. For Felix to work this hard for the sake of hunting them wasn't a pleasant feeling at all as it made his guts twist in alarm, telling him to stay away from him if he valued his life. He must have killed Lucifer and somehow possessed his powers. Wendigo added, he is becoming scarier and scarier, I am afraid we must give up on our revenge for now and remain low-key until we find a way to deal with him. I think so too. Saurus agreed, plus, he isn't alone, he has a backup of 2 primogenitors and 2 elemental lords. This is a losing battle. While Felix's aggressiveness and cunningness had startled them, it didn't surprise them too much. They understood the depth of enmity between them and if they had a chance, they would have been gunning for him too. Let's get out of here, we have been compromised. Wendigo uttered. Without further discussion, both of them left the house on a spaceship as their current vessels holding their wisps were incapable of letting them use their manipulations. After all, they weren't like Mananagal or Lady Sphinx, capable of creating perfect clones, giving them a chance to use their abilities and powers. Those vessels were more or less just normal clones able to hold their wisps and that's it. Though, since Wendigo's mental prowess was extremely extraordinary, his wisp alone was able to use any ability related to souls. As their spaceship took off into the darkest sky, a pair of golden eyes appeared from the shadow of the house, eyeing the departed spaceship. Let's hope Plan B works. Felix uttered in his mind as he emerged from the shadows and sat on one of the rocking chairs. Just like the Darkins figured out Felix's identity, the moment Wendigo used soul inspection, Felix immediately realized that his plan was F***ed and he had to improvise to save it. The first thing he did was cast his illusion domain around hundreds of kilometers of space around the house. Fortunately, they were mere wisps and they couldn't sense the illusion domain manifestation. Thor commentated. Their minds being focused on Felix's identity and his disappearing presence also helped. Hormungandr added. It was clear that the Darkins believed that Felix had gone after he thought that his plan to bait them out had succeeded. After all, they had no clue that Felix's spiritual prowess was even above Wendigo's, which allowed him to sense his soul inspection and give them away. Even if Felix told them about it, they wouldn't believe it since it meant his spiritual pressure was enough to bully them. This was something all primogenitors wouldn't accept even if they were beaten to death. I have switched the time to 1 in a million and made the illusion domain seem infinite. So, even if they wanted to transform the current information into their main consciousness, it would take forever. Felix said, but this merely helps with buying some time. I have to invade their memories and dig the location. If you don't know where to look, it's going to take a long while. Lady Sphinx said. All of them knew that this was a serious problem. While the wisps were under the time difference's manipulation, the same couldn't be said about their main consciousness. So, if they tried to reach out to their wisps and realized that something was weird about the time, they would immediately get rid of them to protect themselves. I don't have much of a choice, this is a race against time and I have to go all out. Without wasting a single second, Felix swiftly manifested more than 1,000 copies of himself, each with a unique wisp operating it. All of his army clones possessed a screen in front of them. It displayed millions upon millions of smaller screens with videos on them. These were Saurus and Wendigo's memories. Even if he wasn't near them, he could easily access them since they were locked in his illusion domain. In it, he was more of a god. If it was up to him, he would have tortured them and extracted the data forcefully. But, he knew that primogenitor's pain tolerance was on another level, and even if he utilized celestial black flames, they wouldn't snitch on their main consciousness right away. After all, it meant exposing themselves to a dangerous ambush and they would never put themselves in such a position. Felix couldn't risk betting on their pain tolerance when he barely had half a minute or even less if their mains were bored and decided to check on their wisps. Begin. With a silent mental command, the legion of Felix clones began sifting through the memories of Wendigo and Saurus, probing deep into their thoughts, searching for any hint, any clue that would reveal their hidden location. All of their expressions were deadly serious, and their golden eyes glowed with an intensity that matched the gravity of the mission at hand. Not this, not this, not this. Felix was also working his utmost best, knowing that his elemental and mental energy wasn't going to sustain such a massive army of clones. He had 20 seconds at best before exhaustion washed over him and he had to make the best of it. As his legion was going through a century's worth of memories with great details, not wanting to skip a single moment, a single scene, a ripple of realization washed over one of the clones. Its eyes widened as it uncovered the vital piece of information they had been desperately seeking. He had found it in Saurus memories in the first years after Felix's death became widely known. They're located in the abandoned lunar outpost, Sector 7B, near Star System 2B67. The clone reported, its tone echoing the relief that surged through Felix as he received the critical information. The data is a bit obsolete and they could have potentially moved out. Felix stood up abruptly with a frigid look, but, I don't have the luxury to complain. With the position pinpointed, Felix swiftly cancelled his clones and even the illusion domain. Then, he requested Lord Koas to link him with the location exactly. Lord Koas helped him out again, knowing that all of this was going to reflect on his own end goal too. Fortunately, he was different than other primogenitors and with just his wisp alone, he could manipulate void energy as long as it was in the void realm to create abilities from a distance. Without an ounce of hesitation, Felix jumped into the void portal and exited near the deserted lunar post. It was nestled on the desolate brown surface of a rugged moon. Its exterior bore the scars of time and neglect, painting a stark picture against the barren lunar landscape. Yet, Felix showed the widest devilish grin in his life after his senses picked up two powerful and overbearing auras in the depth of the lunar post. I found you. 1545 Welcome to your personal hell. 4. A couple of seconds earlier. Within the lunar post, Wendigo and Saurus had established a temporary sanctuary for themselves, far removed from the watchful eyes of others. They sat in a meditative position, several meters apart, each engrossed in their training routines. The interior of the lunar post was minimalistic, bearing the hallmarks of a functional yet Spartan living space. Grey metal walls surrounded them, stark and utilitarian, devoid of decoration or embellishment. Dim, sterile lighting cast an unyielding pallor over the room, accentuating the desolate atmosphere of the moon's surface beyond. It was clear that Wendigo and Saurus spent most of their time using their wisps while leaving their main consciousness chilling here. Suddenly, both of their eyelids were snapped wide open and they turned to each other with solemn expressions after their focus was switched back here and brought with it everything that occurred to their wisps. Do you? Yes. The F*er must have never left and placed our wisps in an illusion domain. Wendigo remarked, his voice sounded livid but also a bit surprised. With the time difference being 1 in a million, it was easy to figure it out after returning to their main consciousness. What surprised Wendigo the most was the fact that Felix found out about them knowing his disguise. He was sure that no one would be capable to pick up on his soul inspection as he had perfected the skill, not even elemental lords would know if he was peering into their souls. I don't know what he has gotten from our wisps and we shouldn't stay here to find out, Saurus suggested while standing up swiftly. Although no less than a minute passed in the real world compared to their entrapment in the illusion, they were not a fan of not having the upper hand. So, to be completely safe, they knew that moving out was a must. However, just as they were about to make a move, both of them lifted their heads sharply after sensing the emergence of an overwhelming aura and unhindered bloodlust. He is already here. They were left shocked, knowing with great certainty that the aura belonged to Felix. Unfortunately, the second they wasted reacting to Felix's arrival was their damnation. It was less than a second, but it was more than enough for Felix to release his monstrous spiritual pressure at the lunar post akin to an unstoppable tidal wave. Impossible, block it. With Wendigo's spiritual sensitivity, he was the first to notice the grave danger that awaited them if they got caught by the incoming overwhelming pressure. Knowing that it was already too late to escape from its clutches, both of them were forced to hold their grounds and join their powers, combining their spiritual pressure in a desperate attempt to block it. Whoosh! Whoosh! The tension in the chamber intensified, causing the very air to vibrate with their conflicting auras. But Felix's might was unmatched, and his sheer determination to overpower them was evident. With a surge of his will, his spiritual pressure shattered the feeble barrier formed by Saurus and Wendigo's combined efforts. Boom! The lunar post quaked as the shockwave from the clash of spiritual forces reverberated through its walls. Metal groaned, and lights flickered in response to the immense pressure. Ultimately, Felix's dominance prevailed. Saurus and Wendigo, their resistance shattered, found themselves frozen in place, unable to move or escape his grasp. The chamber fell into an eerie silence, broken only by the sound of their labored breaths. Impossible, 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 this must be another illusion. Saurus kept repeating in his mind with a freaked-out look while trying his best to free himself. Alas, spiritual pressure lockdown made it impossible for anyone to even cast an ability, as it was the same as putting a chain on the soul. With the soul being forced to stay in place, nothing else could move. Cree, cree. With a sudden and dramatic entrance, Felix pushed the broken rusty gate open, letting out a series of eerie, creaking noises, echoing through the chamber. The dim lunar light filtered in, casting elongated shadows across the room's grey metal walls. With a faint but peaceful smile on his face, Felix stepped into the chamber. He was resting his cosmos breaker on his shoulder, putting a hint of menace to his serene appearance. "It's been a while, gentlemen," he greeted. Wendigo and Saurus turned their frigid but tense eyes toward Felix. There was an unspoken stiffness in the air as they locked eyes with their unexpected visitor, knowing that this scenario wasn't going to end well for them. Felix's voice, laced with ridicule, cut through the tension like a blade. "You thought you could hide from me, but there is no escaping my reach. You had your fun while I was gone, and it's time to collect the debt you owe me. You aren't him, you can't be," Saurus uttered telepathically, his voice growing louder with each statement. "It's impossible for anyone to have a stronger spiritual pressure than primogenitors besides being a unigen. So, who are you?" Even when Wendigo had confirmed Felix's identity through his soul, Saurus refused to believe that his spiritual pressure was surpassed. He could believe such a miracle if it occurred to the elemental lords, but not to Felix. Never, he could never believe it. "Stop coping, you are making an embarrassment of yourself." Felix smiled at Wendigo, "You should learn a thing or two from your partner here." Wendigo remained silent, but the looks he was giving Felix were enough to kill. Unlike his brother, he didn't question Felix's identity even if this situation was simply too inconceivable. "Get it over with and finish us," Wendigo remarked calmly, not wanting to give Felix the satisfaction of seeing them beg or struggle. He understood that it was futile to struggle against someone while caught in his spiritual pressure. It was a literal death sentence even for primogenitors. "Finish you? Oh no, no, no." Felix shook his finger close to their faces, causing their already seething hearts to burn furiously at such humiliation. Unbothered, Felix brought a chair in front of them and sat down. He placed one leg above the other and said with the most diabolical tone, "I have readied way too many arrangements for this specific day and I am planning to take my sweet time with each one of them. You think we will sit by and let you torture us?" Saurus sneered, "I would rather blow my soul." While spiritual pressure could chain the soul, the command to blow it up was always available for the owner. "If that was an option, your brother wouldn't have died in my hands and you know it," Felix replied with a faint smile, seemingly unbothered by their threat. Saurus felt shivers course on his spine as he gazed around him, realizing that they must have already been placed in an illusion domain. Still, fighting against his self-perseverance instincts, Saurus gave the order to implode his soul. Alas, seconds went by and nothing happened, his consciousness ocean remained as peaceful as ever. "Just like I told your past partner in crime, in my illusion domain, you can consider me as a god. As your god, I am in control of your life and death." Felix leaned in and patted them both on the shoulders, "So, prepare to spend some quality time with me." "Oh, I almost forgot." Felix showed a similar sinister smile to the one he showed Mananangal before saying, "Welcome to your personal hell." 1546 Welcome to your personal hell. V. Saurus and Wendigo could already sense dread creeping up on them at the thought of being held down inside an illusion domain. They had never experienced it before, but they understood that if even their unkillable brother was finished off through it, their lives weren't going to be any better. "Stay tough, if it's just pain, then we can eat whatever is thrown at us," Wendigo stated coldly. "We have been through so much to end up crumbling here." Saurus sneered as he stared directly into Felix's eyes, "Don't worry, I won't give him the satisfaction of breaking me." Unlike Mananangal, Saurus and Wendigo didn't have any love for anyone in their lives, which meant the most excruciating pain in their eyes would be physically related. They were molded by pain for billions of years to end up getting scared off by some measly torture. Even if it lasted for millions or billions of years, they were more than ready for it. Such cute defiant looks. I hope you can maintain them. It won't be fun otherwise. Felix chuckled while freeing them from his spiritual pressure, not needing it anymore to keep them tightened up. The instant those two felt his spiritual pressure was uplifted, they used their strongest escape abilities. Wendigo tried to transfer into a different place where darkness existed while Saurus attempted to release his black hole and consume all matter. Alas! I can't use my manipulation. Sigh. Their abilities were locked up and it really didn't come as much of a surprise, knowing that Felix wouldn't be foolish enough to release them without having countermeasures. The sooner you accept your fate, the easier it will be for all of us, Felix said while snapping his finger, creating 2 standard chairs and forcing them to sit on them. They tried to resist his control and stand up, but just like they were pushed by the hand of a god, their butts refused to move. In the end, they could only give Felix the most deathly glare possible without wasting their time in escape anymore. That's more like it. Now, let's have some fun. With a sinister chuckle, Felix set off the entire chamber in inky black celestial flames that flickered with otherworldly intensity. The flames danced around Saurus and Wendigo without touching them, coming so close to their skin, yet not making contact. What's this? Saurus asked with a deep frown. He didn't sense any sort of heat from the flames, which made him confused about its origin. This will be your companion for the next eons to come. Felix sighed in disappointment. Your partner was in luck, landing in my hands when I didn't have my celestial flames. Albeit his torture could be said to have broken him mentally, this would have been checked the physical box too. Hearing speak like this made the Darkins' hearts skip a beat a little. They had never seen such dark flames before, and with Felix's hyping it up like this, it left too much room for imagination. Tisk, what does it do? Burn our bodies and souls? Wendigo mocked. Kid, you think too lowly of primogenitors if you thought we haven't trained our souls' pain tolerance. Give it your best, let's see if you can harm us more than that cruel bitch Kumiho. Saurus laughed it off, wanting to get into Felix's nerves. It was obvious that the Darkins seemed to have some confrontation with Kumiho during the Primogenitors era, where conflicts were raging wild amongst them. As the charm primogenitor, her mental attacks and soul-targeting abilities made her a terrifying opponent and forced most of the primogenitors to consider strengthening their soul pain tolerance. Unfortunately for them, the celestial black flames were nowhere near Kumiho's level. Instead of their words getting into him, Felix merely grinned widely before disappearing into the inky flames. The instant his presence was nowhere to be found, the black flames flooded the Darkins like a pack of wolves punching on a helpless wounded prey. The Darkins closed their eyes and steadied their hearts for the pain. Alas, the moment the flames touched their skin, their eyes were snapped wide open, showing blood veins spreading in their whites akin to snakes. Wendigo and Saurus struggled to break free, their faces contorted in utter agony and desperation. The flames clung to them like an unbreakable curse, searing their souls with a dark and consuming fire. Each attempt to escape only seemed to intensify their torment. In less than a couple of seconds, both of them weren't able to hold their voices any longer and 2 heart-wrenching groans were shouted out. Urgh! Ugh! What is this? How can it hurt this badly? Following the groans, the Darkins screamed out, seeking answers, but no one was there to respond. Felix watched them with a cold, unforgiving gaze, his lips curled into a devilish smile. Not an ounce of mercy was seen in his eyes. He was finally concluding his revenge against his fallen home, family, friends, and loved ones. He might not be free from the shackles of guilt and misery that traumatizing experience brought him, but he was feeling a bit better. Who would have thought that the Darkins faction ending would be at the hands of a human? Elder Kraken shook his head with a wry smile. He knew that if he told anyone about this during the Primogenitors era, they would have laughed at his face. Yet, here they were, burning and screaming at the top of their lung, but nothing was there to ease their agony, not even the Grim Reaper could save them. No one was giving them a single look of sympathy, even the kind Elder Kraken wasn't too bothered with their celestial torture. The ancestors never considered each other as one race or one big family. In their eyes, anyone who stepped out of line and got his ass handed to him deserves it. In this case, the Darkins didn't just make Felix's life hell ever since he joined the Champions Games, they ended his family and made their future plans clear of seeking to target his remaining friends. They had no shame in the way they fought and they deserve this kind of ending. The Darkins faction is done for, but those two are still far from serving their purpose. Thor snickered. Of course. Felix smiled coldly, I will make sure to break them before turning them into demonized slaves. Felix manipulated the time in the illusion domain, making the Darkins feel one day to be 1 millennium. He could have gone much harder on the time difference, but he simply wanted to break them, not utterly shatter them. He still wanted to demonize and make them his loyal slaves, and he didn't want retarded versions of themselves. He was planning to enter the Eternal Kingdom, so having primogenitors as his backup wasn't too much of a bad idea. So, Felix scheduled the Black Flames to turn on and off randomly throughout their punishment period, to give them somewhat of a breather. But in reality, this made the punishment even worse. What's more f***ed up than giving a tortured prisoner some rest and leaving him to his mind, knowing that any moment of the day, another round of punishment would begin. Felix didn't give a sh*t about this heavy mental toll on their minds and began the demonization procedure by absorbing their purities. He extended both of his hands in front of their ugly twisted faces and started pushing his corruption mist into them. The Darkins neither saw Felix nor felt the depravity mist invading their bodies. Felix made it like this to not get bothered during the process. Even while weakened, in pain, and have no clue about it, their bodies are resisting off the depravity reflexively. Felix raised an eyebrow after noticing that his corruption mist was battling to absorb their purities. 1547 His first demonization. It's expected, we have trained our bodies to their absolute peak forms, and even while unconscious, they can fight for themselves against any invasion, Hormungandr said. Luckily, I have inherited the real deal. Without hesitation, Felix increased the power of his corruption mist by 10-folds, breaking through the Darkins' walls brutally. If it was any other demon, they would have been unable to pull it off, but as the true controller of the evil energy, the potentness he could push off was unlike any other. With each tendril of mist that he pushed into their bodies, a visible change overtook the Darkins. Saurus's muscular horse-like form twisted, his noble silver scales turning a sinister shade of crimson as if stained by the blood of the fallen. Horns, sharp as the daggers of traitors, crown his head, and his eyes burn with the light of a soul succumbing to darkness. Meanwhile, Wendigo's body contorted, limbs stretching into distorted shadows of their former grace, his skin became a tapestry of the night sky but as cold and unforgiving as the void itself. Spikes, like the spears of an unholy army, rose from his spine, completing his transformation into a creature of nightmare, matching well with his dark element. As this perversion of nature unfolded, Felix's form began to radiate with an unholy light. The purity of Saurus and Wendigo, once vibrant within them, flew into Felix, drawn out by the same mist that damned them. I can feel it empowering my body, Felix remarked with a delighted tone as he stared at his twitching muscles. It had been a very long time since his physical strength was empowered due to the lack of opportunities involved and he kinda missed the feeling. With every ounce of purity that entered him, his power grew, his stature became more imposing, and his eyes glowed with a light that was not his own. The crimson mist, a tool of corruption in his skilled hands, not only transformed his victims into demons but also served as a conduit, siphoning their inner light to feed his ever-growing hunger for power. Unfortunately, the purities within the Darkins weren't a lot due to their dark and evil nature. They were utterly merciless and even when their descendants were left on the brink of extinction, they weren't affected emotionally that much. So, what Felix absorbed was the pure energy produced mostly from their life essence. Rumble. When the process finally finished, Felix was surprised to hear a soft thunderclap resounding in his mind. It echoed in everyone's minds in the universe, catching them by surprise. They weren't surprised by the noise itself, but by how frequently it was happening until they started to wonder if this was even a special phenomenon anymore. Is this? You are the first to demonize an actual primogenitor, it will be weird if the universe hasn't responded. Lady Sphinx said. I really want to know the source of those thunderclaps. Felix commented with an intrigued tone. At this point, he started to feel like they were targeted at him. He knew that the universe made such sounds before to celebrate the great achievements of other pioneers, like the founder of the Origin Realm, but he had never heard it in his lifetime without it being related to him. Even the thunderclap of Nemo's birth was because of him. It's best to drop it. Everyone tried to figure it out and failed. Lady Sphinx shook her head. Just think of it as a universal celebration. Even though Felix had a feeling that there was a much deeper reason than that, he decided to drop it for now, focusing on what matters. Will you look at that? Felix smiled widely. Who would have thought those buffoons will help me get stronger by at least 100,000 BF? He could sense his body changes to the tiniest detail now, and he didn't need to test his strength with a machine to come up with a close estimate. Not bad at all considering that you have already surpassed 1 million BF, Hormungand uttered with a satisfied tone. It's a great boost. Fenrir nodded in support. All of them understood that increasing their strength past 1 million BF was an unsurmountable challenge, and most of them went through the gutter for eons just to improve by a little. So, an instant 100,000 BF without any struggle was more than welcomed. I wonder how much strength I will get if I absorbed Lady Yggdrasil's purity, Felix murmured, thinking of Lady Yggdrasil's galactical tree size and the potent life within it. She was one of the epitomes of pure energy owners in the entire universe, and Felix had a feeling that his strength might even increase by 500,000 if he went for her. Before this thought could be planted in his mind, Felix swiftly shut it down. No wonder the Paragon mentioned her by name. She was playing with my greed, knowing that I am desperate for strength. Felix narrowed his eyes. With Felix's current strength, he could take her down if he wanted, but he could never go for it since Lady Yggdrasil had helped him way too much in his journey, and she was his friend's mother. Even if he was the new personification of evil energy, he would never stoop that low for the sake of strength. He still has his insanity intact. There are other primogenitors. Lord Shiva proposed indifferently. They are just wasting their time watching those foolish games and being an embarrassment. You might as well do them a favor and take them out. No. Felix rejected it immediately. I have no hostility with them, and I am not a psychopath to hunt them down just because I have gotten stronger than them. When he was below them, not a single primogenitor made a move against Felix, even when he kept eliminating their champions left and right. The only one who caused him some trouble was Kumiho, but she kept it within the game atmosphere and never targeted Felix outside of it like the Darkins. There are plenty of things to get purities from besides the primogenitors, and even if the progress isn't as fast, I would rather go slow than become a bully, Felix remarked calmly. Most of the primogenitors showed Felix nothing but support, even standing with him against the Darkins when they targeted his planet. He respected their fairness and would do nothing to make them regret giving him a chance to reach this level. A couple of days later, Felix could be seen sitting in front of demonized versions of Saurus and Wendigo. They still had no clue about their demonization, and Felix made sure that its effects wouldn't carry on within the illusion domain and ruin their punishment. What a punishment it was! The Darkins had suffered more than 5,000 years worth of burning on and off with the black flames until despair had consumed them wholly. Please, please end me, I beg you. Saurus muttered under his breath with a soft voice barely noticeable. His eyes were voided of hope, pride, arrogance, and dignity. They became a manifestation of void and suffering. If he appeared before other primogenitors, they wouldn't recognize him at all. As for Wendigo, he had it just as worse. The black flames had consumed his entire personality and defecated an empty shell of his old self. I can't take any more. Their situation was so bad, that the black flames weren't on them at the moment, but their minds were even more terrified. What's more shocking? This fall of grace happened in the first decade of their torture, which meant, it only took the black flames 10 years or less to destroy billions of years of building character. When Felix and the tenants noticed the drastic changes in them, even they were left with serious expressions. Those black flames seem to be the curse of all existence. Lady Sphinx disclosed, I have no idea how can your body control the real deal. Neither do I. Felix murmured, neither do I. 1548 The end of the Darkins. A week later. What do you think? Is it in them to get penalized a bit more? Felix asked while rubbing his chin as he watched the desolate and numbed looks of the Darkins. I believe they had enough, they look like empty corpses. Thor replied with a faint snigger. He is right, any more and they might never recover. Hormungandr agreed. Even though they hated them to the core, they didn't want them to become broken dolls, incapable of thinking for themselves. It felt too short for us, Felix remarked while cancelling his black flames, finally deciding to free them from their eternal agony. While less than 2 weeks passed in the real world, those two suffered for more than 10,000 years. It might not seem like much, but the black flames made each second seem eternal. Even two of the most terrifying primogenitors were turned into docile silent dolls. They had screamed, cried, and begged in those years more than all primogenitors did ever since they were born. Suddenly, Felix appeared in front of them while clapping slowly. Congratulations, you have survived your punishment. When they heard what he said, they lifted their heads and stared at him with deadpan looks, not an ounce of life was seen in their eyes. They lowered their heads again and remained silent. They might have gone through hell, but they still maintained a high level of rationality. It told them that Felix was merely here to give them false hope before shattering it to pieces to laugh at them. God knows they would have done the same. Nothing hurt more than having their hope devoured by those black flames. Smart of you to not believe me, but I am not joking. Felix disclosed calmly, I have demonized you and plan to make you my loyal servants. While you can't betray me even if you wanted, I still want to ask your opinion on the matter. Do you want to become my servants or burn here for eternity? Before Felix could finish the rest of his sentence, the Darkins yelled with a husky voice simultaneously, servants. Damn, you could have acted like you struggled with the decision for a bit. Felix was left speechless. Saurus didn't care at all about his pride or reputation. He looked at Felix like he was his god and bellowed emotionally, servant, slave, demon, I will do and be anything you want to never get touched by those flames again. So, please. Please, don't burn me anymore, please. He was so emotional, that only tears were left from falling to showcase his deep turmoil state. This was a primogenitor, a god in the eyes of mortals, who was treated with great respect and worship. Dynasties were built around him, empires fell because of him, and many races and species were conceived with his bloodline. Yet, here he was, on the verge of sobbing. I am starting to get inquisitive about how it feels to be under those black flames. Lord Shiva remarked coldly, are they really that deadly or are those two simply lost the will of a primogenitor? Likewise, I have to get a taste of it. This is honestly madness. Fenrir nodded. Those two had the most pride in their identities as primogenitors and none of them could have imagined there would be a day, where they would witness a peer reach this state. I will do anything, trust me, anything. Wendigo kept it short, but his words were just as bold. It's good that I have you on the same page. Felix smiled while snapping his finger, cancelling the illusion domain and allowing them at last to feel the changes occurring within their bodies after demonization. What they? I feel different, like this isn't my body anymore. It came as no surprise that both of them weren't a fan of the changes or the coursing evil energy within their veins. While almost all demons wouldn't feel the deep controlling nature of evil energy, primogenitors had great intuition. They immediately realized that evil energy had taken ownership of their bodies like a parasite. While they were given the illusion of free will, they understood deep down that the instant a thought of betrayal came into their minds, the evil energy would retake control over them and make them pay a steep price. Yet the worst part? Immediately after they lifted their heads and looked at Felix in the eyes, a sudden overwhelming feeling of worship flooded their soul. It was like they were staring at the most important person in their lives, even more important than their own lives. No matter how they tried to resist the feeling, it was utterly useless. Let's test out your obedience. Felix ordered coldly, kowtow before me. Before they could even consider the thought in their minds, both of their knees buckled and they landed on the ground with a heavy thud. Their arms followed suit and then their foreheads, smacking into the metallic floor. The entire sequence happened in less than a second, like their bodies and minds didn't have a single thought of rejecting Felix's order. While on the ground, Wendigo and Saurus glanced at each other. They could see the desolation and hopelessness in their eyes, which made them both understand, no, accept, that from now on, this was their life. As much as they hated the thought of it, the memory of getting burned by the celestial black flames was still too fresh in their minds, sending shivers course down their spine each time they recalled the pain. It was so horrible, that both of them immediately dropped those thoughts of resistance and called out loud with a tone of reverence, "We greet the Master." "Oh ho ho, not bad." This painted a wide smile on Felix's face. He understood that they would always actively try to please him even when they abhor the thought, just to keep those black flames away. "I guess this is the ending of the Darkins." Hormungandr shook his head with a wry smile. "To see them calling Felix Master is truly an image I have never thought would be possible. I knew his capability was always frightening, but I never thought of such a possibility." Hormungandr was more than happy for Felix, but this situation also made him realize that he was truly surpassed by Felix even when he was at his peak form. It was always a master's wish to see their student become a better version of themselves, surpassing them and breaking their limits. But in his eyes, it happened way too fast, making him feel like his title as a primogenitor meant nothing anymore. How could it mean anything when two primogenitors were kneeling before Felix? So, in his eyes, this wasn't just the ending of the Darkins, but also of the primogenitor's supremacy in the universe. A new supreme being was born today, and through the inner sadness, he was more than joyful to know he was his master and had a hand in his journey. On the other side. "Haha, that's because you lack my foresight." Thor laughed in enjoyment. "Ever since I accepted him as my student, I always foresaw the day when he would make the Darkins kneel before him. After all, he is my student." Mother ***. Hormungandra's eyelids twitched, knowing that he screwed up by giving Thor an opening to reclaim the best teacher status. Just as he was about to retort, Lord Shiva proposed from the sidelines with a serious voice. "If you want to settle who's the greatest teacher, I suggest you eat his black flames, and the one to last the longest is the winner." "I agree, it will determine it once and for all." "I believe so too. I will be the judge." Fenrir, Lady Sphinx, Elder Kraken, and Lord Loki all chimed in support, causing those two to gulp a mouthful. They knew that those old bastards wanted nothing more but to see them wiggle in pain, knowing that their rivalry would make it impossible to drop before the other. "What? Are you scared?" Lord Loki grinned as he fanned the flames. "The Darkins have resisted the celestial flames for thousands of years. It's a bit humiliating if you can't take them for a couple of minutes. Don't you think?" "Don't say that, the Asgardian faction has won the battle at last. How can they be scared of something the Darkins resisted?" Elder Kraken shook his head. Thor's and Hormungandra's expressions turned a bit ugly the more they listened to their blatant taunts. "We had enough of your idiotic best master rivalry," Lady Sphinx proclaimed indifferently. "Either you settle this now with the black flames, or you shut up about it forever. You monsters!" 1549 Chad Fenrir. Still, Hormungandr and Thor were brothers before rivals, making them able to come up with a strategy with a single glance. "If it's like this, then I will be the first to admit that my brother Thor is a much better teacher than I," Hormungandr announced the unthinkable, catching everyone by surprise. Before they could react, Thor proclaimed while scratching his nose, "Brother Hormai, you are embarrassing me. We all know that you are the greatest master around here. If it weren't for your first judgment and taking little Felix under your arm, none of this would have happened. How can I accept such high praise?" Hormungandr rubbed his chin with a slight look of pride. you have taught the kid almost everything while I was backseating. Isn't that right? He inquired while looking at the irked and irritated looks of their peers. No one was amazed at their shameless act, knowing that those two had no plans to fall in their provocation. Who could blame them? It was a lose-lose situation. They would be in needless agony while becoming a laughingstock in the consciousness space. Tisk, cowards, all talk no action. Lord Shiva clicked his tongue in criticism while returning to his manga book, not wanting to waste his time with this anymore. Alas, neither Thor nor Hormungandr were going to accept his insult in silence. At least we didn't talk big about wanting to test out the black flames. Thor pointed at him and Fenrir, you two should keep your word before you start egging others. Without a single word of complaint, Fenrir requested expressionlessly from Felix, set me on fire. Are you sure about it? Felix asked speechlessly. He remained quiet the entire time, wanting for the matter to be settled as peacefully as possible without bringing the celestial flames into play. Do it. Fenrir stood upright in the middle of the central plaza while flexing his hardened muscles. He looked as serious as always, making everyone understand that he wasn't joking around. Now that's how a primogenitor should act, Thor remarked with a thumb up, completely ignoring his cowardly act from before. Everyone rolled their eyes at him and didn't bother bashing him again, knowing that his skin was just too thick for a deity. Here I go. Felix sighed hopelessly while pointing his palm at Fenrir. A moment later, he launched a pitch-black fireball at him. Whoosh! The flames enveloped Fenrir, and at first, he stood resolute, trying to endure the agonizing sensation. How long do you think he will last before he lets out a sound? Elder Kraken inquired as he watched in intrigue. Fenrir is known for having one of the highest pain tolerance among our circle. Hormungandr disclosed, he should last a minute or more. To put it in comparison, the Darkins lasted merely a few seconds before they couldn't contain their voices any longer. I say less. Lord Shiva said expressionlessly, peeking from the corner of his book. Wanna bet? Thor supported Hormungandr. The loser will go next. Lord Shiva smiled coldly. F***er, you are going next either way. Thor cursed. Tisk, remaining a coward all the way. Lord Shiva taunted, what a nice image you leave in your student's mind. Hat, he is more shameless than me, you think he will care? Thor sneered. Why am I getting strays? Felix muttered. Meanwhile, Fenrir was fighting for his life, clenching his teeth, determination etched on his face. More than 10 seconds went by and he remained tougher than a boulder. Too bad the intensity of the celestial flames kept getting more overwhelming, and Fenrir's composure began to waver. Ugh! At last, he let out a low growl, unable to contain the pain any longer. His body shuddered, making him know it couldn't endure it anymore. This surprised the tenants as he barely lasted for half a minute. Yet, the biggest shock came next, as Fenrir made a move out of desperation to stop the flames. He unleashed his absolute zero, trying to freeze the celestial flames in time and quell their torment. However, to his shock and dismay, the flames remained unaffected by his efforts, defying even the power of absolute zero. Ag! Thud! Fenrir's growl of pain turned into an agonized roar as he fell to his knees, incapable of remaining on his feet. Without waiting for anyone to intervene, Felix cancelled the flame's terror immediately, freeing Fenrir at last. Huff, huff, huff. Fenrir lifted his head with great difficulty and eyed Felix with a deep sense of dread while breathing with great difficulty. How was it? Lady Sphinx asked with a solemn tone. Whether it was Lucifer or the Darkins, none of them gave descriptive feedback on how they felt. Give me a moment. Fenrir held his hand up while sitting on his back, taking deep breaths in between. Even though he lasted for less than half a minute, it was clear that the pain had gotten into him deep down. After he collected his thoughts and recovered a little, he narrated with a look of dread. I don't know how to elaborate it, but it felt like I was burning in the deepest parts of my soul, like the flames were touching some unknown pain receptors in my soul. It was horrifying. So, it's mostly soul-related pain. I don't know, I was just feeling pain from everywhere and anywhere at the same time, boosted by 1,000,000 degrees. Fenrir muttered, "It's not something meant to be experienced by anyone." Everyone showed solemn expressions at his description, understanding that it would be impossible to know how it felt without trying it. But after seeing Fenrir's ending, no one really wanted to go through it. Even Lord Shiva dropped any thought he had and returned to reading his book, seemingly wanting to disappear into the background. Luckily for him, Thor wasn't in the mood to joke with him. Lord Hades had told you that only the white celestial flames exist and they are born out of pure celestial energy. Thor remarked while eyeing Felix, "So, how is it possible for you to create black flames from celestial energy? It must be related to Asna's core." Felix shook his head, "I am just a human and I barely have any interactions with celestial matters." She was held prisoner from a young age, and clearly, it wouldn't be possible to know her true capabilities and powers. Felix refused to believe that the black flames were a special thing connected to him, since it made absolutely no sense in his eyes. It was more likely that Asna could use both types of celestial flames and she never exposed the other type of flames. Whether it is related to Asna or you, those black flames can be considered your most powerful armament against the rulers. Lady Sphinx remarked, "I have a feeling even them won't be able to handle the pain born from those flames. At this point, I only wish to have access to it against Nemo's alter ego." Felix smiled wryly. Felix understood that his illusion celestial flames were utterly useless against Unigens since they were immune to illusions. So, he would be fighting without one of his strongest elements, and Felix wasn't comfortable with thought. Don't think too deeply about it. Nemo's alter ego might be powerful, but he was sealed for a very long time inside the earring. Hormungandr reminded, "Asna said that the seal sucks out the prisoner's powers significantly, forcing them into a slumber to slow it down. That's the only thing giving me some confidence." Felix's confidence was over the roof after he got his spiritual pressure enhanced, but when it comes to dealing with Nemo's alter ego, he knew that his spiritual pressure should barely be able to match up with his due to his weakened state. This meant Felix wouldn't have spiritual pressure, illusion abilities, void domain, and the majority of his elemental abilities. He would be more or less going into the fight naked even if he possessed all immunities to the 7 laws, so, how could he not be bothered? "I think you should visit him and examine on his current state," Elder Kraken suggested. "You can strategy based on it." "I know." Felix seemed a bit hesitant. His masters swiftly discerned that he wasn't frightened or anything, but worried about a scenario that would ruin his entire plans if it happened. What if Nemo's alter ego decided to merge with Nemo? Felix would be put in a situation where he would need to choose between devouring Nemo or giving up on this method to save Asna. Unfortunately, it didn't seem like there were any other ways to become a Unigen. 1550 Reuniting with Nemo's alter ego. Felix didn't want to imagine being put in that position, as he knew that while the decision was extremely difficult, it would be simplest to make. Don't worry, if he wanted to merge with Nemo, he would have reached out long ago, Thor said. "We will find out later. For now, it's time to receive your gifts." Felix switched his focus back to his main consciousness, where the Darkins were still bowing before him in utter silence. "You may rise." At last, Felix allowed them to get up. "Put your wisps inside my consciousness space," Felix ordered while extending his hand at them. F***ck. Sigh. The Darkins knew that Felix was going to make such a demand, but still, it didn't make them feel any better to hear it. Although they hated getting humiliated by Felix, at least, he was powerful enough to defeat them, and their relationship with him wasn't as strong as the Asgardians. They had been fighting off against the Asgardian for God knows how long, and now they were going to be their slaves. It didn't feel good in the slightest. Alas, crying about it wasn't going to do anything. Without delay, the Darkins sent wisps inside Felix's consciousness space. The instant they manifested in the central plaza and opened their eyes, they were left startled by the sight of the tenants' numbers. "Welcome fresh meat." Thor grinned diabolically while gulping down alcohol like there was no tomorrow. "It's about time we have some new servants. Bring me grape juice." Lord Shiva commanded almost immediately, not giving a sh*t about their primogenitor status. In his eyes, the instant they knelt before Felix, they had lost their title as primogenitors and they were nothing more than high-quality slaves. "You heard him," Felix uttered indifferently, uncaring about the Darkin's sore looks. "Right away." Saurus was the first to make a move, teleporting in front of Lord Shiva and creating a purplish grape juice with the grey mist. "What's this?" Lord Shiva gave him a cold side glance. "Your juice. I told you to bring me one, not make it." Lord Shiva pointed at the open bar with his eyes and didn't add anything else. "Okay." Saurus swallowed his anger and humiliation as he turned around, wanting to teleport to the open bar. Alas, before he could do so, Hormungandr informed, "Servants are banned from teleportation, always walk." Saurus nodded in understanding and walked to the open bar under everyone's eyes. He was feeling like an animal on display, a feeling he never thought a deity like him would ever experience. Yet still, he had no thoughts of rebelling, keeping his frustration to himself as he made the juice by hand and delivered it to Lord Shiva. "Candace, you want something?" Felix asked. "No. No," Candace shook her hands in rejection, feeling a bit overwhelmed. While Felix and the primogenitors felt absolutely nothing from ordering the Darkins around, she was still incapable of accepting them below her. It was like a mortal ordering a god, even if he could, it wouldn't sit right within him. "Candy, from now on, those two are the new maids and you should feel comfortable ordering them with anything you desire." Felix smiled as he helped her get some courage. "If they dare reject you or even look at you the wrong way, just tell me." When Felix said the last part, he manifested the black flames on his palms as he eyed the Darkins indifferently. "I will make sure to show them a good time." Shivers coursed down Saurus and Wendigo's spine at the thought of getting tortured again. Without an ounce of hesitation, Wendigo actively walked to Candace and requested with a polite tone, "What does the madam desire?" I, water will be fine." After struggling for a few moments, Candace finally conquered her fears and ordered something. In a few seconds at best, a cup of water was placed gently in her hand, leaving her staring at it in a daze. "Is this real life? I am actually above primogenitors in rank within the consciousness space." She never thought this would ever be a possibility and it was going to take a while for her to get adapted to her new position. Meanwhile, the others couldn't care less and they started working the Darkins to death with all sorts of requests. From giving them massages, entertaining them, bringing them stuff, cleaning their houses, overseeing their games, and the list goes on and on. Some couldn't be bothered like Lady Sphinx while some made sure to let the Darkins recognize their worth in their eyes. Their fall from grace was way too steep and if the other primogenitors saw them like this, they would honestly be left too dumbfounded to react. Meanwhile, Felix had embarked on his journey towards the Void Nation's dimensional pocket. He didn't ask for help from Lord Koas since he wasn't in a rush any longer and it would be impolite to keep asking him to transport him here and there. He wasn't his personal chauffeur after all. During his journey, Felix decided to pay Nemo's alter ego a short visit. He reached out to his golden earring with his finger and closed his eyes. The moment a connection was established, his consciousness went inside the earring's spatial space. When Felix opened his eyes, he was greeted with the same ceiling hall without any changes to it. The soldiers' statues were there, holding tightly into chains, which were connected to a platform in the middle. Above the platform, a small black flame was flickering non-stop. The atmosphere was quiet and eerie, giving Felix some flashbacks of his intrusion in his previous life. Just as Felix was about to step closer, the small black flame started burning intensely and growing bigger until it resembled a giant burning horse with devious red eyes. Those eyes reflected nothing but utter hatred and anger while they were affixed to Felix. "You are still alive. Nemo's alter ego asked with a suppressed tone. I am not easily killable, Felix replied without a hint of shame, having no intentions of letting him know that he died and got revived. If you are here to persuade me on merging with that soft retard, then you better scram. Nemo's alter ego snickered, I would rather rot here. Stubborn as always. Felix acted like the news bothered him, but in reality, he couldn't be any happier. I just have to bide my time, there will come a day where you will die and the earrings will break apart, freeing me. Nemo's alter ego gave a sinister laugh, I promise you then, I will have you revived and pay you back for everything you have done to me, everything. In his mind, the sealing hall could only weaken his powers and not kill him. Meanwhile, neither Felix nor the earrings were unbreakable and all he needed to do was wait patiently, nothing more, nothing less. I wish you good luck in fulfilling your fantasy. Felix turned around and waved a peace sign, leaving the sealing hall without wasting any more of his time chatting with him. He entered the sealing hall to figure out his strength, but no matter how hard he tried to sense his powers, he couldn't pick a damn thing. This wasn't too promising as it made him understand that Nemo's alter ego, even weakened, was still a force to reckon with. However, at least he got a confirmation that Nemo's alter ego sought sole ownership of his entity and nothing was going to change his mind. What's your next plan? Candace asked with a curious tone as she was receiving a shoulder massage from Saurus, already getting used to bossing them around. I have to enhance my physical strength at all costs. I don't know how strong Nemo is, but my physical strength must be a joke compared to his. Felix said with a solemn tone, since I can't enter the origin realm, this leaves me with the dragon/devourer marks and absorbing purities.